Okay, we are going to call the meeting to order. And can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
This is Melissa. I move we approve the agenda.
The second?
This is Paula. I'll second.
John,
Yes.
Hill,
Yes.
Padu Blackwood,
Yes.
Gordon Ross,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Kimball, Smith.
Yes.
It passes 7-0.
All right, thank you. We're going to move on to special recognitions. Erica, do we have retirements this evening?
We don't have any this evening that I saw, no.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we'll move on to the report of the president of the board, which is me. I wanted tonight to address a couple of birthdays, acknowledge them. So I wish a happy recent birthday to board member Erica Hill and Carol Cadu Blackwood and Dr. Lewis, I think yesterday, correct? Saturday. Happy birthday to you all. I hope you had great birthdays. I want to extend my thank you to Boys and Girls Club for inviting me to participate in the Youth of the Year mock interviews. It was a great place to center my work, to be in front of students and to hear about all the good things they're doing and all the good things that Boys and Girls Club does. And it was really a great joy. So thank you for including me. This week, or since we last met, GR and I have met with the negotiations team for the certified staff, and we continue to look at issues related to the gating criteria. There were concerns raised around how to make sure that we are accounting for elementary teachers' safety and following with some fidelity the mitigation strategies for when they are in person. We also continue to look at the FFCRA, which we had hoped would be extended by Congress, and that seems to have not been the case. So we continue to work on that issue. We'll be looking at calendar issues, which we talked about this evening, and then some other strategies around protecting teacher workload. So looking forward to continuing those conversations and doing the best we can to account for all of those issues in a way that honors teachers and our students. So I also wanted to address briefly the decisions recently by Keisha to not follow recommendations made to them by medical professionals to delay competition until January 5th, to extend the winter moratorium through January 3rd for winter sports, and to limit spectators at games. While I understand that they have challenging and complex considerations, it's yet another example of an opportunity in which we could have worked collectively as a state, and now find that we are making decisions on the individual level in different counties, which has forced superintendents and administrations and activities directors to make decisions based on criteria that extends beyond our county. It is, for me as a single board member, been frustrating to see that that evolution in the decision making and to watch counties struggle with it. So I also want to recognize that the policy committee has met, and we continue to work on the board governance document, and we'll continue to do that work to hopefully help support Erica Hill as she moves into the presidency next year, and to support all of us in our governance role. And we are also in the policy committee continuing to do work on the equity policy, which I'm excited to have the opportunity, after we've gotten feedback and made edits from members of our community, to bring to the board, hopefully for passing in January and potentially early February. So now I will ask for the report of the superintendent and pass it to you, Dr. Lewis.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. I have a few updates. I always say few and it end up being more than three. But as you were highlighting, we do have an upcoming birthday from a member of our executive leadership team, Dr. Anna Stubblefield, will celebrate her birthday this coming Wednesday. And we do also want to welcome Rhea to Kathy Johnson's family. This is grandbaby number 8, and she was also born on an amazing day, December the 12th. So she and I celebrate birthdays. So congratulations to Kathy Johnson and their family. As the district begins the search process for a Lawrence High School principal, we have invited students, staff, parent, and community input about the leadership qualities desired in the next principal. We also are surveying those groups about their interest in serving on advisory committees during the search. We anticipate interviews will be held in mid-February. The district is working on a COVID mitigation compliance tool to be used during school walkthroughs beginning in January to gauge the level at which our safety measures are being followed. Building climate surveys of school staff and families are being distributed this week, along with an opportunity for principals to give feedback on the service and support provided by the Education Support Center. I encourage families, staff, and principals to participate in these opportunities for feedback. After Keisha overturned its previous ruling about spectators, our schools will be allowing 2 spectators per participant to attend competitions. There will be exceptions to this, indeed, if the venue is too small to accommodate safe distancing. The district is pleased to have received another Kansas Leadership Center grant. We will have another 90 spots available for staff to take part in leadership training. The libraries of Cordley, New York, and Prairie Park schools, as well as West Middle School, were selected to participate in a COVID relief grant program through the Northeast Kansas Library System. These schools applied for grant funds to offset the cost of purchasing materials and/or technology to help ease the disruption of COVID-19. Prairie Park's library purchased 125 fiction and nonfiction ebooks. West Library purchased high interest and culturally responsive ebooks and audiobooks. Corley and New York's library purchased fiction and nonfiction ebooks, as well as picture books to support student social and emotional learning. Lawrence High School hosted a district-wide multilingual tech help night last week to assist non-native English-speaking families with technology and internet connection needs, and I appreciate all of the staff who certainly made this event possible. Free State's High School Assistant Principal and Athletic Director, Dr. Amanda Fonts, presented at the National Athletic Directors Conference this past weekend. Her topic was a model for outreach, engagement, and development of female interscholastic athletic administrators. Congratulations to the Lawrence High School students for winning cash prizes at the Lawrence Douglas County Youth Entrepreneurship Challenge. We're also thrilled to have 2 Lawrence High students, Riley Leon and Alice Lubin-Meyer, named 2020 National Young Artist Foundation winners in photography. I want to share my appreciation for honorary Woodlawn River Hawk Sybil Miller. She is 90 years old and has been crocheting warm hats for Woodlawn students. And she says she's just been doing this just because. She doesn't live in North Lawrence or have any ties to Woodlawn School. She told our staff that she's sick of watching TV and that crocheting keeps her out of trouble and is more fun than cleaning the house. So thank you so much, Ms. Miller, for your generosity. As you know, our district saw a deep enrollment decline this fall. Apparently, we were not alone. The Kansas Association of School Boards last week shared that enrollment in both public and accredited private schools in Kansas declined more than 3% from last fall, with the largest drop in preschool and lower grades. Statewide enrollment in public schools dropped a total of 15,667 students in grades K through 12 and state-funded preschool programs. You can read the full report on the KASB website. I am pleased to continue serving on Kansas Governor Laura Kelly's Commission on Racial Equity and Justice. The commission shared our recommendation last week related to law enforcement and policing in Kansas. You can read the full report on the governor's website. Last week, I began one-on-one meetings with all building administrators, and they continue this week. I'm also meeting with small groups of teachers from every building beginning this week. I will be listening and learning for ways we can continue to support our buildings, our staff, and our scholars. As you know, this is the last week of school prior to winter break, the holiday season, and the end of the calendar year. And I again want to thank our students and their families, our teachers and staff, the administration and the school board for all of your efforts in a year like no other. I continue to be proud of the work that we are doing, especially the adaptability we have shown with changing circumstances. We have not been perfect. We have not been able to please everyone. We have always acted with safety and the best interest of students in mind. And I hope everyone enjoys a safe and happy holiday season. Hope everyone totally disconnects. I have high hopes for the new year and look forward to working with our school community to continue to improve the way in which we serve and support our educators and scholars. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lewis. And I wanted to say, I didn't say and should have said that Happy Hanukkah to folks celebrating tonight, and to all of our families who over winter break will be celebrating holidays. I, like Dr. Lewis, hope that you get the opportunity to do that in a way that allows you to account for self-care, particularly our teachers who have been working hard to educate our students. So I am now going to move on to Patron Commentary. And GR, I'm going to once again ask if you will read that while I pull up the list remotely here.
The USD 497 Board of Education welcomes Patron Comments and thanks you for taking time to talk to us about our policies and procedures. We set aside this time during our regular meetings to hear from the public. This is your time to share your opinions. However, complaints about specific staff or students will be heard by the board in executive session in order to protect the privacy of the individuals to be discussed. While you are not required to share your contact information, we ask for that information so district staff or the board can follow up with any specific concerns you may have. The board president will invite comments on topics not included on the agenda at the beginning of each meeting. Comments related to agenda items are welcome after the board has had the opportunity to discuss the topic. Please limit comments to 5 minutes.
Okay. So to start, we'd like to invite Sarah. Sarah, are you with us?
If there's only one of me on the list, then yes. I don't know if there's more
Yep.
than one list, but okay.
It's you. Welcome. It's nice to see you.
Let's see. So, okay. My notes. Everyone, my name is Sarah Russillian. My pronouns are she and her, and I'm a teacher in the district. I have 3 children, 2 of whom graduated from Lawrence High and an 8th grader. My oldest daughter is a 2020 graduate and missed out on all sorts of senior activities, including a choir trip, and is doing well at college. Was she disappointed to miss out on playing her viola at state competition? Yes. Would she have liked to finish her photography portfolio and spend a little more time in Miss Perkins' class? Of course. However, she learned an invaluable life lesson in the process. Life can be disappointing. Sometimes opportunities are missed. It's how you move on that makes a difference. When the March shutdown occurred, we took it very seriously at my house. Some parents were still arranging sleepovers, and my youngest daughter politely declined the invitations. I went to the store to buy groceries and saw people still not wearing masks. There was one store where people would take off to get into the store and then take it off as they shopped. We didn't travel, attend family funerals out of state, and survive 5 people sharing 1,200 square feet of space with 1 bathroom. Has it been worth it? Yes. We continue to minimize our exposure because my spouse is terminally ill. We've had 2 years more than what was expected when he was initially diagnosed thanks to immunotherapy. He's currently stable, which is a big deal, and I don't take that for granted. I'm lucky. When elementary enrollment shifted and many families chose to go to remote for the school year, I was able to become a remote teacher. Having had a few confirmed cases of COVID in my building, I was able to limit the chance of exposure because I was already working from home. Some people in the community say we're lazy grade, the teachers don't want to work, and the kids are missing out. I want them to know that we're not lazy. My colleagues spend more time working outside the duty day than ever before. We design lessons and look at new ways to keep students engaged. Do we want to be back in the buildings and back to normal? Yes. I miss the energy that comes from working on site. My school is amazing, and there's nothing like teaching in person. However, I want it to be safe for all staff and students. I can't change the fact that my building has some of the smallest classroom sizes in the district. Maintaining a 6-foot distance means one of the teachers in my building is squished into a corner because there's no other way to make it work. Our paras can't be 6 feet away the whole time either. Have you ever tried to point out text features or read or correct work from that distance? It's a challenge. Ever supervised a cafeteria full of unmasked kids while they eat and wonder if you're being exposed to the virus? You should talk to our paras who do these duties for a reduced rate. They have to clock out of their instructional pay rate and get paid at the lower supervisory rate for taking on this risk. At the risk of sounding snarky, I have to take a moment to address the irony of a school board meeting held virtually to instruction. I've been in the boardroom many times before for PD, committee meetings, and to attend past board meetings. You could easily fit 2 of the classrooms in my building into this one room. Using tables, it would be very easy to space out board members 6 feet apart with plenty of room to spare. I invite you to come to my building and see how some of our classes are starting into their classrooms. Our staff members spend a good 7 hours in classrooms where we have been told that our air quality is sufficient, masks are enough of a barrier, and to wash hands frequently, even though the classroom sinks are a thing of the past. We are told not to cross cohorts, but we send special teachers into the building, and in some cases 2 buildings. We are told not to cross cohorts, and yet it is done to meet intervention. We are told not to cross cohorts, and yet some of our schools have students eating lunch together in the cafeteria. We are told that classes can't be combined to cover for a lack of subs, but my understanding is that some students at LHS were sent to the cafeteria for supervision, didn't have subs. If cohorts are not crossing, if that is still part of our mitigation strategies, then why is it not enforced? Are there other mitigation strategies not being enforced? If not, why isn't it reflected accurately in our new gating criteria score? I am part of cohort 2 for remote learning. I work with 15 teachers in grades 3 through 5. There's never a time to collaborate with them as distance teachers. We do PLCs with our home buildings and work on data for students we may not even work with anymore. It would be nice to exchange ideas and tips with other distance learning teachers once in a while. We are also not afforded the privilege of the 90 minutes of Wednesday plan that was granted to the hybrid teacher. While it was created to address the planning needs of 2 modes of instruction for hybrid teachers, the remote teachers could use it for a different reason. Remote teachers work with students from many schools in the district. They might have 3 special ed teachers, 2 SLPs, title teachers, and social workers to coordinate with, and yet there's no time reserved for them to do so. Remote teachers still attend IEPs. Many of the teachers I work with have class sizes of at least 29 students, which is a lot of grading and parent contacts, and allowing them the 90 minutes that the rest of the elementary gets would not be time wasted. Doing our best with what we have, we are tired. Being told that we need to stop living in fear, tired of being blamed for everything that has gone wrong, tired of sports continuing to be played across county lines while being told that in-person instruction is really the priority, tired of gating criteria being changed to meet district's prerogatives, tired of waiting for everyone in the community to do their part so that it is safe for students and staff to all be in the building together again. We're tired, and I am tired. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. I appreciate that you showed up. Miranda, are you here with us today?
Hello.
Hi. So we're ready, and you may proceed. It's nice to see you tonight.
Great. Hello. Thank you, Kelly. I just wanted to share a few things with the group tonight, as I know that these are challenging conversations that you're having. I just really do want to share my daughter's story, because I think it affects many, many, many students that are going through this process, especially in hybrid. And I want teachers to know that I respect what they're trying to do or needing to be safe, but I just want them to understand, one, that I hope that the teachers that have issues, medical issues, can stay home, or a close family member. But for all the other teachers, want to start opening up the conversation for full-time learning because I do want to give my daughter an education that she deserves. Now, I was looking for data, and I did receive. So I know that I'm not making these irrational statements because it's not convenient for me as a parent. It's not convenient for me as a single parent. I will tell you, nothing about it is convenient. It's very, very hard. But I found that her testing scores, national scores that were just taken as a first grader, are, I hate to say it, for reading around 1%. I'm going to say it out loud. I questioned if I would say it, and there you go, I did. Last year at this time in kindergarten, she was very average in that space, some a little bit below, some a little above, but I know she was an average learner. So I knew we had some things to work through, but now I'm dealing with the 1% issue on her reading. Now, with this critical information, I decided this weekend to hire an outside agency to also put her through a test so that I could see where she's at. And that test, I got the results today, and she is at a 75% of a kindergarten curriculum is what she knows, which is pretty much exactly when schools were canceled last year around March, right? So those are two pieces of data that I know that from March till this current situation, right now, she's had minimal amounts of learning, what she is absorbing. And as any student, reading is critical, but especially moving from first grade to second grade, is she going to be able to actually read directions and do some of these basics that she's going to need to move on? So this is my pain. I haven't slept much the nights trying to figure out what's next. If I do go ahead and work with this agency for some outside tutoring, that's well, it's $1,500 to start, and then about $550 a month added to the pod, which is $700 that I'm dealing with. Like, this is what I have to deal with. And what I appreciate about this agency is that I have a roadmap for what we are guessing she can do to get to her second grade level. That will be $550 a month through July. So yes, it's as a single mom, how am I going to do this? I can't allow her to fail, so I got to do whatever I got to do. But these are just some of the pains that, yes, I'm speaking to elementary education. This is my story. So one, I need someone to say out loud that we are not going to have full-time in-person learning for those who are needing it and asking it. I really want to understand that so that families can start making some decisions here. And then two, I just want to share briefly that I know that this hybrid model is not necessarily working, and we need to do better. If this is all we're going to get, we need to figure out a better way. I know a lot of these high schoolers are in the buildings, but also doing remote learning and hybrid. It's almost like I feel like there's a bait and switch. Like, we're all excited to get into class, and now we're still just on iPads. And and that has happened to my daughter also in first grade. Her ISA groups were being done on an iPad. So we need to start getting real in the situation and figuring out what teachers can be in the buildings comfortably and which ones cannot, respecting everyone involved, including parents, because we're doing our best to try to support teachers and the situation and stay afloat. And it's just getting, wow, it's getting painful. So that is what I have to share with you tonight. And I appreciate the time.
Thank you, Miranda. I appreciate that you came and that you focused our conversation on academics and making sure that we're getting your child and everyone's child what they need for their education. I appreciate your coming.
Thank you.
Panelists, if you can hear me, we're having a sound issue at home, so we're going to pause for just a moment. Please stay with us, and we'll take a 5-minute break here.
What about now, Joe? How about now, Joe? How about now, Joe?
Okay, thanks for everyone's patience. We're gonna go back to Patron Commentary. And next on our list, Marcy Owens. Miss Owens, are you here?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm actually Brent. I'm going to speak on her behalf.
Okay, great. So yeah, it's 5 minutes. So we're done at 35.
Perfect. Board members, first, thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. As I mentioned earlier, my wife was the one that signed up to speak, but she passed the torch to me. As I said, my name is Brent Owens, and I'm the dad of a kindergartner at Sunflower Elementary School. I'm here to speak on behalf of him because his voice matters to me, and I hope, since you all are on the school board, it matters to you as well. It pains me to not see the excitement in my son's eyes that he had when he went to preschool the last few years. Kindergarten is supposed to lay the foundation for kids that school is the environment to learn and have fun. It's where kids should enjoy building relationships with their peers and learn socialization. On top of that, several of his friends go to private school every day in person. Even his younger brother goes to preschool every day, and you guessed it, in person. Talk about confusing to a kindergartner. I get it. COVID has put a strain on a lot of things: careers, relationships, finances, and most importantly of all, education. You all are wanting to put different weights on the gating criteria guidelines, but why aren't we putting more weight on educating our students? Remote education works for some, but not for others. It was recently said by a school board member in an email that for every request for full-time in-person learning, there was also a request for full-time remote learning. People who ask for something they already have seems oxymoronic. There was already an option for full remote. Congratulations, you have won that argument. Where is my choice for full-time in-person learning? Piggybacking on what Miranda just said, has the board given up on going back to school full-time? If so, you are doing a disservice to our students and you have failed your duty as a school board member. We constantly hear the argument about safety of our students and teachers. As school board members, your number one priority is about education and what is best for the students. In fact, teachers should also want to provide the best education for their students. I'm his parent. Let me worry about his safety. If I didn't feel it was safe to send him to school, I wouldn't. I would have chosen the existing fully remote option. Whoever tells you that an iPad education for kindergarten is equivalent to an in-person education shouldn't be teaching. It blows my mind that the LEA president supposedly speaks on behalf of every teacher, yet most of the teachers I have spoken with also want to be in school. They know they're doing a disservice to the students in this current model. It's exhausting to hear that teachers cannot perform their job due to fear. If I told my boss that I couldn't get out of bed due to being scared, I would be given two options. A, find a different profession, or B, be fired. Also, the vaccine is upon us. Maybe the LEA should use their voice to secure the vaccine for educators and finally admit they are truly essential frontline workers. Lastly, I ask that you trust the people with MDs and PhDs after their names. Numerous times we've heard about plans to get back in person, but they've been heavily scrutinized or shot down completely. I find it intriguing that medical leaders in our own community choose to send their kids to private school solely because those private schools are 100% in person. They realize that the benefits of in-person education far outweigh the risk of COVID, especially in elementary age students. It's time we figure out a way to return to school. Again, thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Owens. I appreciate your coming to the board and providing us that experience, both for your family personally and for other families in the district. All right, Shane. Shane, are you with us?
I am here. Can you hear me?
Hey, it's nice to see you. Yeah, please join us.
Okay, I think, can you see my video too? I don't know where
we can, yeah.
Perfect. Okay. Also, Joe, can I get sharing capabilities too? Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Hello, my name is Shane Hyman. I know most of you. I used to be sitting in the front or the second row of board meetings every Monday night that I could come. I'm in my 15th year of teaching, and I have to say this is one of the hardest years I've ever taught in the 15 years. I would almost say this is almost like my first year of teaching to some extent. What I wanted to share with you tonight is part of my daily routine. And I think this is imperative. And I'm even in my classroom to do this because I want to even model for you what my classroom looks like, because I think that's important for the community to see as well. First off, what I'm going to share on my screen, it's not going to show any students. All privacy is going to be kept. I just want you to see one thing that I think is going to be important. All right, if you look at, can you see my Google Chrome? Can you see that right there, my Google Chrome? Okay, all my tabs above there. On my Google Chrome tabs, you're going to notice from left to right, I first start with my Go page. I have my Google Docs. You're going to notice I have my New York lunch count on here because I work at New York Elementary. My morning message that I write to my kids is part of my morning meeting protocol. I don't know if you can see. Okay, the morning announcements is right after that. That's for our daily school morning announcements that I put up here. The next thing I have is my Power School to take my attendance. The Patron Commentary, that's my email right there. And why I'm showing you all those tabs is because not only having those tabs up on my screen, but also I have my WebEx going on at the same time. Plus, not only am I doing that, I'm also airplaying part of my presentations to my students here in my classroom so my kids can see, and also for my kids to see at home. So I'm actually sharing through my WebEx. This can be quite a conundrum because I have to first make sure my WebEx is up before I leave to go get my kids. So that way my students that are coming in via WebEx, they can actually log into my class. When the kids come in, I'm taking attendance on who is trickling in to WebEx and who's in my classroom while my students are eating breakfast in my room, so we can mitigate the amount of the spaces that our kids are in. Let me move just a second here. Okay, let me go to this. All right. Now, the other thing I want to show you is, or tell you is that having all those tabs on my Chrome, I know it doesn't look like much, but actually to get all that created, it's about 10 or 15 minutes of my morning, okay, which is fine. I don't mind that, part of my daily routine, but that's just for my first 30 minutes of teaching. 30 minutes. I have to get all that preparation ready to go. Now, take that times 5 to 6 lessons that I do a day. It can be a lot. It can be a lot. I also wanted to share with you real quick. I think I can stop sharing now. The one other thing I want to share with you in my classroom is, I'm going to lift up my iPad here, is I want you to notice that all these squares I have taped off for all my students in my classroom. As you can see, I've taped off my classroom. I'm fortunate. I'm so fortunate because I have a really big classroom. I can have 11 students, 11 to 12 students in my classroom. Now, here's the thing though, this kid right here, he's right next to the board. He doesn't always like me all the time, but as you can see, they're comfortable, okay? Now, here's where it gets tricky though, is if I come over here and there's 2 students that sit right over here in these 2 desks, they actually would have to move anytime a student goes to their supply area in the back there, because each student has to have their own supply area. That's a trick right there. If students want to come over here to the other supply area where they keep their like crowns and markers and things like that, this student right here, he has to move out of the way. I say this because I know that we say we have enough space in our classrooms. That is not always the case. Like I said, I'm fortunate that I have a big enough classroom that we can maneuver around fairly comfortable in. But when it was explained by Tony Barron that the square footage is enough per classroom, it isn't always enough. And the reason why is because there are some built-ins that are not really built into the classrooms. There are these shelving units that were given to us when we got the renovations that are actually movable shelving spaces, okay? And it's about 75 square feet of classroom that it takes up, a minimum. So I don't know if that's counted in some of the numbers. And if I look at the previous classroom I was in, there is no way that it would be big enough for the number of students I have. So I'm just stating all this. I'm not advocating for remote. I'm not advocating for hybrid. I just need you to know some of these specifics that I'm dealing with as an experienced teacher. And I will say one other thing. I know it's hard on everyone. I know it's hard on parents. I know it's hard on teachers. I understand the difficulty that we're all going through. And I just want to communicate that teachers are trying. The workload, though, is getting unbearable. This is coming from someone that I don't have kids at home. All I have is my 3-legged dog that I have to worry about. And I know if I'm hurting and I'm really the one suffering as far as the workload, I know it's going to be hard for others. So I appreciate your time tonight. Please let me know if you have any questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you for bringing us into your classroom and showing us a little bit about your day. I appreciate it. Adam, are you here this evening? Can you see him as a panelist there? I'm looking to see. Okay, so we'll come back if need be. I believe those are all of our patron commentaries that are not related to the gating criteria. Actually, Lindsay Buck is here with us tonight and is the union president. I just want to ask Lindsay if your preference is to go now or with the gating criteria.
My preference would be to go now if I could.
Okay, yes, please.
Okay, thank you. Hey, everyone. Good evening. I'm Lindsay Buck, she, her, and I'm the interim president of the Lawrence Education Association. This evening, I'll address some critical and time-sensitive issues that impact our schools, including the new KSDE recommended gating criteria, extending the Families First Coronavirus Response Act, and early vaccine access for educators. KNEA President Mark Barr recently made the following statements regarding the KSDE recommendations on gating criteria. He said, according to state medical experts, it is now recommended that keeping facilities for elementary education open provides better safety and supports for students because there's less risk of transmission of the virus in this setting. However, measuring updated recommendations against other key factors is critical. These factors should include the following. First, the safety and well-being of adults should be taken into account in all circumstances. All in-person learning should adhere to strict distancing, hygiene, and personal protection protocols. Gating criteria should be implemented consistently and thoroughly rather than cherry-picked to align with personal or political agendas. And community circumstances, including infection and transmission rates and access to medical care and facility capacity, should influence decision-making. Kansas NEA members have expressed their unwavering desire to return to school for in-person learning and for schools to remain open. However, this goal is only attainable when teaching and learning are safe, according to state and local medical experts, for all students and their adult educators. Kansas NEA cautions state, local, and district officials to be mindful that this update to the gating criteria is recommended and should not be cherry-picked to support an unsafe rush to reopen facilities. End of statement. Also recently, 10 local education associations from Northeast Kansas, including Olathe, Shawnee Mission, DeSoto, Baldwin, Eudora, among others, joined together to issue a statement on the Families First Coronavirus Response Act. Here's an excerpt from the statement. The FFCRA provides 80 hours of paid leave to employees who need to quarantine, care for a family member quarantining, or provide care for a child whose school or childcare is closed due to COVID-19 related reasons. Just as the pandemic is intensifying with Kansas setting record numbers of COVID-19 cases, the FFCRA will expire on December 31st, 2020. Simultaneously, public school employees will continue to risk infection of COVID-19 as a few school districts remain open against the guidance of public health departments' recommendations when there is a dangerously high level of community spread due to the pandemic's instability. Due to the pandemic, many educators have either had to quarantine or take leave to care for a loved one, leaving many without any additional sick days. Many educators will be penalized if required to quarantine again or care for a loved one who needs to quarantine. This is an injustice that can be stopped. Our local associations are united in calling for the United States Congress and President Trump to put working families and children first by reauthorizing the FFCRA. Reauthorizing this critical legislation will ensure that all families can have economic security and slow the spread of COVID-19 in our communities and allow individuals to care for themselves and their families. If the U.S. government fails to respond to this impending crisis, we call on our local school boards to honor the FFCRA provisions through the remainder of the 2020-2021 school year through memorandums of understanding with their educators. FFCRA leave is essential to providing economic stability for our educators and education support professionals during the midst of high levels of community spread. We invite all educators, leaders, and community members to urgently contact your U.S. senators and House representatives. We implore school boards to act in order to protect their employees and encourage the community to advocate for these protections with their local school boards. We implore communities to wear face coverings and social distance to slow the spread of COVID-19, allowing educators to return to in-person learning for our students. And lastly, in a recent press release, Becky Pringle, the president of the National Education Association, made the following statement. Every single student, educator, and parent in America has spent the past 10 months in a state of anxiety of the COVID-19 pandemic and what it's done to our school communities. With the promises of a vaccine on the horizon, we have a new opportunity to return to an in-person education where every student can thrive, but only if vaccination campaigns are done safely and equitably. American educators are working tirelessly every single day to advocate for and create healthy learning spaces for our students. NEA is calling on the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, as well as state and local governments, to prioritize educators for early access to COVID-19 vaccines. Additionally, the Kansas NEA president, Mark Farr, recently released a statement on vaccines saying, all educators, because they work most closely with students, should have access to the COVID-19 vaccine as quickly as possible to return to full in-person teaching and learning as soon as it's safe to do so. In conclusion, we ask that our local leaders in the district, on the school board, and in our local and city, in our city and local county governments to continue to prioritize the health and safety of our community. We ask that you contact your representatives to urge the extension of the FFCRA, and if that doesn't happen, we ask our board to extend it through an MOU. And lastly, we ask that educators receive early access to the COVID-19 vaccine. The pandemic has highlighted how absolutely vital our public schools are for the success and overall well-being of our students, school families, and the entire community. We call on community members to contact your elected officials to urge that educators be among the first to receive the vaccination so that we may return to in-person education as quickly as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Lindsay. So a couple calls to action there around early access to vaccines for educators, which I think the board can come to agreement on. And of course, as we continue to advocate for the continuation of the FFCRA. So with that, that is our final patron commentary for the moment until we have additional folks that would like to speak directly to and the gating criteria specifically.
Oh, I think Adam is back.
Okay. Adam, did you want to join the board meeting?
Can you hear me okay?
We can. Welcome.
Okay. I apologize. I don't know what kind of, I'm using a different laptop, so that's my excuse. I apologize for not being responsive earlier. I'll start by saying I shouldn't be here speaking tonight. I'm a parent first, and tonight I had planned on attending a sophomore basketball game. It was the first which had allowed parents to spectate and give their players some feeling that, that the adult world does care enough about them to apply the same logic to student-related education and sports that we're applying in nearly every other area of society. However, I received a text from him 35 minutes prior to tip-off. He had been told that he was not eligible to play tonight due to his poor grades. And this is especially upsetting as he's been participating in sports since August without any interruption in his participation, and his current grades in December are actually better than they've been in any other month since he started school. Yet he's been benched tonight to suddenly be humiliated in front of his fellow players and their parents. So we can add that to the list of blindsides this semester, which I know we're all experiencing together. Sports have been the only thing in his life that have offered a sense of community and belonging and self-worth. They've offset those feelings of abandonment and unimportance that have been created by the isolation of remote learning. And I don't say that to point the finger at anyone. I'm just simply stating that remote learning does create isolation. And our district's response to the COVID-19 pandemic has opened my eyes to many things, and not the least of which has been how much over the years this community has made both of my sons who are in high school at LHS now feel valued, important, significant, and loved. And that's teachers, coaches, everyone involved in their sports and education. I had no idea just how critical their interactions with peers and educators were to their sense of worth and their excitement for life. I knew those relationships were important and integral, but I had no idea just how much until I saw how fast kids could spiral downward and lose all passion for life once forced into isolation. I entered this COVID conversation with the district in late summer with a full head of steam and a belief and a passion for changing things for the better. And at that point, I still had faith that our district could turn things around in a relatively expedient amount of time and find a new approach, dig for a deeper level of honesty and cooperation with one another. And I was willing to sacrifice family time, personal time, and work time in order to contribute all available resources within my reach to helping find a way to get our kids back in the classroom full time as quickly as possible. To my dismay, I didn't find many within the ranks of district leadership who were working directly toward that goal. And I mean directly toward fully in-person learning. It became apparent very quickly that most were working towards finding ways to justify continued remote learning or to limit in-person as much as possible. And I found that thought cloud concept from the district thought share survey very interesting in how it represented the general consciousness of those who took the time to participate. And I haven't taken the time to do so for myself. I still might, but I'd be willing to wager that if we created a thought cloud of the most commonly uttered words throughout the last few months of board meetings, we might see that the words teachers, staff, and afraid would be much larger than the words students, children, education, and isolation. And I'm just throwing that out there as food for thought. I'm not trying to make any accusations with that, although it might sound that way. It's an observation. I've listened to many teachers talk about how difficult it can be to follow mitigation protocols at school, and I believe them. So my question is, why aren't we helping fix that problem? And maybe there are some things that are happening towards that end, but it's not in the public view. And a lot of parents that I talk to are very worried about that. Are we getting after those problems aggressively? Are we asking the private schools that are getting it done safely? It's not like we have to figure this out for ourselves. I think there are others that are succeeding. And I would hope that we could get in the mindset of getting this done in an urgent and immediate fashion. So the arguments have played out over and over again, whether or not kids should be in school during the pandemic right now, before, 2 weeks from now. I'm not here to argue that point. I'm just stating that my personal experience over the past few months has been that many of those with the power and authority to provide our children with the greatest possible experience through the past few months haven't necessarily used their platforms to do that. And while some glimmers of progress have been made, too many board meetings have dragged on for hours and hours with no decisions or action to show for it. Conversations have droned on without discussion about how to get kids back in class as the urgent and immediate priority. As parents, we've asked, begged, pleaded, yelled, demanded, and protested for a plan to return to in-person schooling. For months, we've asked what's being done, what actions are being taken to get our kids back into full-time school. And to my knowledge, the general answer that has been received, if any, has been an expression of hopelessness that until there's no more spread, no more community mitigation protocols, no more COVID, that we'll never see fully in-person schooling. And to me, that's not a plan, that's not leadership, that's an admission of defeat. As hundreds have flocked out of our school district seeking refuge in neighboring schools and communities whom have shown the resilience and resolve to put kids in classrooms every possible day they can, I'm left wondering if they were the wise ones. I wonder if my efforts have been worth the time that I've lost with my family for this cause. Have I gained anything for my boys? Is there rescue on the horizon? And now with a vaccine in transit all over the nation, I'm haunted by new questions. Are we actively and presently working for a plan to re-entry into the buildings for full-time in-person learning for the second semester? Will we take advantage of falling transmission indicators and reduced active caseloads? Or will we find new excuses and new obstacles to throw in the path of progress towards that? Will fearful people still be allowed to refuse to report to school buildings because they still don't feel safe? I couldn't tell my son that I was choosing not to support him tonight, but instead staying home to virtually attend another meeting to try to convince people that his education is vital and that his isolated suffering should be a priority that deserves every ounce of attention and every district resource available. So I told him I would be there. Unfortunately, we were blindsided at the last second. And so I'm spending my evening with you all instead. I'm almost finished here. My sons, like so many students and families and teachers, can clearly see the truth that at this point in the pandemic, school is not only possible, it is being conducted safely and intelligently in buildings all across the land, but not ours. In Lawrence, we often fancy ourselves as a community of educated and successful professionals.
Adam, we're at about 7 minutes, so if you could wrap up, that would be great.
Okay, thank you for letting me know. I'll skip to my closing here.
Mm-hmm.
My 3.0 student may very well fail 4 out of 8 classes this semester and earn D's and 2 others. He has registered over 130 class absences, and I have not been contacted a single time by the school office. His assigned school counselor, whom I value deeply, has worked to find ways to help him. At this point, the best thing that can be offered is one more day of hybrid learning, where he'll go and open his 10-inch screen to do the same thing he does at home. He'll sit at lunch alone at a table by himself. And on his way home, he will drive past businesses, health clubs, bars, restaurants, stores, private schools, where life is going on in a relatively normal fashion, all things considered. People are masked, but they're working together, learning together, eating together, living life together, but not him, not a USD 497 student. They are the demographic we've decided should shoulder the greatest burden during this pandemic. We've sacrificed their health, happiness, education, and sense of value. Only theirs. Everyone else in the community is forging ahead. So when he asked me why everyone else in the
Adam,
community—
I'm so sorry, because what you're saying is so important. Can you, can you wrap up the, thank you.
I can. I've got 3 more sentences. When he asked me why everyone else in the community can do life together except him, I don't have an answer. All I know is that after I get his grades issue resolved with the athletics department, I'll be attending his games on Monday nights. Instead of being at these meetings, I'll no longer be one more adult in his life, making him the last priority. So as this meeting proceeds, I hope I'll hear something I can be excited to tell him when he gets home. And lastly, Kelly, I do thank you for letting me go 8 minutes.
I'm sorry, I appreciate you taking time and commenting and your advocacy over the course of this year. It means a great deal to me, and I've enjoyed our conversations and learned a lot from you. Thank you. Move on to board commentary. Do we have board members that are?
Yeah, this Joe, I'll just go quick. Just a couple things. Shannon and I, late last week, were able to attend a facilities committee meeting, got an update on various projects across the district. LHS construction is proceeding according to plan, and then we got an updated capital improvement plan and some creative ways that we're going to attempt to use some capital improvement dollars. We invited David Vignery to attend that meeting to try and get some collaboration within the IT space and capital improvement. So that was good. So it was a good conversation about how things are going. If I missed anything, Shannon can fill it in. And then to extend something that Kelly said about some of our negotiations meetings, I'm also excited here. I think right after the first of the year, and I'm looking at Kelly, we're going to start the process to negotiate with PAL CWA.
Yeah, do the training.
Do the training with them on what we do with the LEA, and so I'm excited to get that started and start that process with them as well. So that's what I had.
Other board members?
This is Melissa. I just wanted to kind of echo what Dr. Lewis said earlier about just, the end of this year and as we're approaching winter break, just appreciation for teachers. And I know that even at the high school level, there are teachers just trying to make it as engaging as possible and trying to put in a little fun and flavor, I like to say. I just thank you. And I may not know exactly what everyone has their own narrative, but I know the work, the hard work it takes, elementary school perspective at least, and even hearing some things from my student who is struggling a lot, but then also taking that time to kind of share those good things that are happening even in the midst of the struggle. So thank you to the teachers and parents and everyone who's impacted by this, our experience this year. So
Thank you, Melissa. You bring the joy this evening, and we can see how hard elementary teachers work based on the gear you've got on this evening. So thanks for representing. Other board members?
Kelly, this is Paula. Just a couple of things. Just want to extend my happy birthdays to board members Erica and Carol, and happy belated birthday to all, including Superintendent Dr. Lewis. Appreciate all the work that you do, Dr. Lewis, and then sitting on the board with my colleagues, Erica and Carol. So happy birthday. I am really looking forward to that COVID mitigation tool. After hearing the Patron Commentary, I'm hoping, it's my hope that we will be able to improve what's already in place. So I'm looking forward to that in January. I'll make it short. I had a one-on-one with Ferris Mohammed. He's the Director of Equity and Inclusion Director for the City of Lawrence. He just reached out to get to know one-on-one with, I think he's doing it individually to all board members. So we just talked about sort of what his intentions are and why I ran for school board. So that was a fun conversation. I continue to sit on the Equity Impact Advisory Council meetings and attending the community well-being meeting and the other two meetings, the COVID recovery response meeting. Kelly, you already mentioned the policy committee, so we've attended that with you, so that was a nice summary. I've also attended the Justice Matters Research Kickoff. So they talked a lot about the overview of their research process, how to ask questions during research meetings. Their three focus areas are eliminating homelessness, jail alternatives, and restorative practices. And so I had the opportunity to sit on that discussion. I also participated on the first round of One Dream applications for Martin Luther King. So first time I've ever did that, and it was exciting to read through the amazing work our community teachers and students are doing. It definitely showed the support that we have for each other as a community. I attended the LHS Site Council. Some of the discussion that I could hear was focused around the mental well-being, both in-person and remote students. Talk a lot about the mindfulness presentation. Talk a little bit about thriving and others. So they can stay connected with students and keep them engaged. They talked a lot about the mid-year check-in survey, just a quick 5-minute survey to gauge students' perspectives regarding remote and hybrid learning, and they'll share that out in January. I met with Nicole Riles with Burt Nash, and I think this sort of aligns with our legislative priorities that we'll be going over and later in the meeting. So she has been in conversation with Jose about strengthening support systems for teachers for their mental health and well-being. It was really nice to hear the support systems that we do have in place and those natural resources for teachers in our district. One other thing that I pretty passionate about that I attended was the Native American Student Services Program financial audit that they're conducting. Right now, I'm a little disappointed how that process is going right now. I don't feel like it is being taken seriously from the program director. I think especially during this time, it is really critical to take that program serious, where those fundings could help assist families where community gaps and needs exist as it pertains to American Indian and Alaska Native youth families in our district. Lastly, I attended the KASB Lunch and Learn. Learned a lot, seen some alarming data points, especially one in particular about teen suicide, up from 8.6 in 2016 to 11.1 in 2020. So that was pretty alarming to hear how COVID has exacerbated some of these data. Yeah, it was worrisome. That's all that I have. Thanks, Kelly.
Thank you, Paula. Other board members?
Kelly, this is Shannon. I have some few things to share.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So I wanted to share a few activities I've been involved in since our last meeting at the end of November. Wanted to compliment the Kansas Association of School Boards first ever virtual convention. I attended the full 3 days. It was an excellent conference. I know that at least some of my fellow board members were able to attend some of the sessions, and I appreciate that. If you signed up but didn't get a chance to watch the videos, those will be available actually for a year. They're going to leave the conference website up for a year. So if you registered, you can go back and watch any of the learning videos and Q&A sessions. I particularly recommend the engaging keynote, David Horsager, his session on trust and how it's the biggest driver of both success and failure in schools and in other institutions was an incredibly timely discussion and really relevant to the experiences that we are having in this moment for public schools and for public school leaders. So I really highly recommend that. If you didn't sign up and you want to watch that session, contact me offline and we'll see what we can figure out, because it really was worth the time. I've had the honor and privilege over the last 6 weeks to be involved in a strategic learning process and planning process for the National School Boards Association. This past week, that process culminated in 4 day-long workshops that the team have completed to finish up that work. We had our final session today to help identify the key priorities that came out of all of that collective planning work. I was really honored to be included in that process, and I'm optimistic that the work that was done will help ensure that our National School Boards Association continues to be a leading voice in support of public education as we move forward to 2021, the next presidential administration and beyond. I will just say that I was heartened by the passion and enthusiasm of the voices at the table for students, for equity, for public support of public schools, and support for local governance of public schools. I was alarmed at some of the things I heard from a national perspective about coordinated advocacy efforts that are ramping up even more than they have been to remove local boards of education from the governance process for public education. And I think that is something that on a macro level, as board members, we all need to be aware that that's out there, and that is those voices have plenty of private funding to amplify that message, and I think it's one that ultimately will do harm to our students and the quality of education that they receive in our communities. And so I really encourage you to be engaged in advocacy efforts in support of the work that we do. I also, as Kelly mentioned and GR mentioned, policy committee met, facilities committee met. I don't have anything to add to the reports from that. The COVID advisory committee met last Wednesday. That's the committee that Kelly and Erica and I are all on as board member representatives. And we heard updates on some of the things that we'll be discussing this evening. And then finally, I attended the COVID town hall that was put on by Douglas County Public Health and the staff from Lawrence LMH Health last Thursday evening, and heard an update from them about the status of the pandemic in our community, and that was really helpful. Finally, I wanted to acknowledge a couple of things. We've had, as we have for this whole semester, the board's continued to receive lots of email from members of our community. Wanted to say thank you to everyone who continues to reach out and share their experiences and perspectives. It's really, really important to me. I know you're not getting a response to every single email, and I just wanted to reiterate that I'm reading them all, and your input is appreciated. A couple of themes that have come up repeatedly in some of those emails recently, particularly around staffing and sub shortages. That continues to be a real concern, both from staff and from student and parent perspectives. And then sports and the mask mandate. You know, I want to bring it up. I think it's important to name and acknowledge those concerns. I have concerns, and there are parents and community members who are sharing similar concerns that although we have a mask mandate that applies to our athletes when they are playing in Douglas County, we are not asking our athletes to follow that mandate when they travel outside of our county. Since COVID is an aerosolized virus, and that some of the places where our students are going to compete are actually bigger hotspots than Douglas County is currently, I think it's important to continue to place a critical eye on that policy and continue to consider and evaluate whether that's the best choice for both our students and our staff safety. So just wanted to highlight that. And then finally, wanted to just wish everyone on the board and in the community and our staff a peaceful and healthy winter break. This has been a year like no other, and my appreciation for all of you is immense, and I just wanted to share that. So thank you.
Thank you, Shannon. I appreciate that. Other board members? Okay. So we will move on to the agenda, which I'm pulling up. Okay, so the consent agenda, can we get in a motion for a recommendation to approve the consent agenda?
This is Shannon. I move that the board approve the items listed on the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
JR, I'll second.
Padu Blackwood,
Yes.
Gordon Ross,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Kimball,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Hill. Motion passes 7-0.
Okay, moving on to the gating criteria. Presenting is Dr. Lewis, Superintendent, and Zach Conrad, Executive Director of Data and Technology, to give us an update based on our last board meeting where we adopted the Kansas State Department of Education gating criteria.
Thank you, Board President Jones. As you recall, at our last board meeting, the board gave administration direction to continue to address the weightings in such a manner that would take into account those 5 criteria from the Kansas State Department of Education. Also, the board made the decision to wait until the final approval of the updated navigating change gating criteria was approved by the Kansas State Board of Education, and they did approve the updated version, which is attached in board docs. And that change included allowing remote for PK5 to happen according to the Kansas gating criteria, to happen in red. So we've looked at the weightings, consulted with our state epidemiologist, Dr. Farah Ahmed, shared the weightings with our COVID committee. If you recall, our COVID committee consists of a very diverse group of community members, staff, board members. We do have a physician on that board. There were some conversations around at the COVID committee around student absenteeism. You'll see in this in the weightings that it has a weighting of 5%. There was also some conversations around hospital capacity, and both the physician that's on our COVID committee as well as Dr. Farah Ahmed gave us some advice on hospital capacity. So with that, I will turn it over to Zach, and he will walk you through and share the weightings on the gating criteria. Zach?
Thank you, Dr. Lewis. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And this is our COVID dashboard website that we've seen before. On the top of this website, we have added the gating criteria. And so the first thing that we notice is what the board had adopted, KSD's navigating change document with the school's gating criteria. So we have embedded within this dashboard the gating criteria as outlined by the Kansas State Department of Education and the navigating change document. Below this, we have how we have weighted each of those categories that you saw above with a final score and the color code that we are currently in. So on this chart, we have the gating criteria listed on the left-hand side, and that comes straight from the KSDE chart. Underneath it, we have where we are pulling this data. So the 2-week cumulative county incident rate, we're pulling from the Kansas Department of Health and Environment, and so forth, Lawrence Douglas County Public Health, all the way down. Then we have also visualized, and you'll see up above that we have taken this information and visualized it down here with our point systems underneath. And so the wording around this is going to be identical to what's up above. So 0 to 50 new cases, 51 to 100 new cases, puts us in those different color categories. Underneath, you see the points associated with it based on our weighting. So if you were to move down this chart with green, you could see that the weighting is 30% and 30%. Each of these in that category is worth 0.3 points. As you go down to 20%, 15%, and 5%, they have associated points with them as well, according to their weighting. So over here in the red, we see a 1.2, and down here we see a 0.2. So there's a significant point difference between 2-week cumulative and student absentees, and that's because of the weighting that we are giving each of these. So when you total the points, and you can see the point total on this side, here's the value. So 557 puts us in the red and gives us, based on the weighting, 1.2 points. 6.5 puts us in the yellow, and according to the weighting, we get the 0.6. We then sum these to get our total score. Here is the criteria that we use to determine which color code we are in. So right now we're at 2.2 based on all of these factors and the weightings. which puts us in yellow. So it falls between the 1.6 and the 2.5. So 2.2 puts us in the yellow. So that is how we have operationalized the gating criteria according to the direction we were given last week, 2 weeks ago. So are there any questions about the criterion weightings?
Board members?
Kelly, I think the one question that has come up that I was asked that I did not know the answer to had to do with what were chosen to represent local hospital capacity. Could you explain a little bit how those, what the data for that and how it's calculated, please?
Shannon, I think we lost the first part of your question. I'm looking at Zach and he's nodding his head. So yes, can you repeat that question again?
Yes, can you hear me okay now?
We can.
Okay, the question was, I had received a question and I wasn't sure how to answer it, so I'm asking for some clarification regarding the numbers that were chosen to reflect hospital capacity. Could you touch on what those numbers are and why it was chosen?
Yes, and I think actually Dr. Lewis could add to this conversation. So we pull this from the Douglas County Coronavirus Response and Recovery Hub, but there's two sets of numbers that come to us or that are available on this site. And the one that we're choosing is the surge capacity. And I was not actually directly involved in that conversation, but I know that Dr. Lewis was. So Dr. Lewis, would you mind speaking to that a little more?
And Zach, what's the other option of a number besides surge capacity?
That was overall capacity, I believe.
Overall.
General capacity.
General use. Yeah, after talking to our folks at the Lawrence Douglas County Health Department, particularly Dr. Scrumshire and Sonia Gallmer, Sonia Jordan, I'm sorry, they suggested we use the surge. Also, I got that confirmed with our state epidemiologist, Dr. Farah Ahmed, and that current beds in use is 50%. I'm sorry, 57%. They have a goal on their in their metrics for that to be less than 40%. And so we're using that surge capacity. And I don't know if you remember the physician on our COVID committee and Dr. Farah Ahmed both express, I wouldn't call it concern, but just an awareness of how that data point could shift, and which was the reason we moved it from 20 to 15% in terms of weighting.
So basically when you say surge capacity, I mean, I think I understand what that means, but just to answer the question, that doesn't mean that's not how many super sick people are in the hospital. That's how many beds LMH thinks that they could set up in a tent, in a garage,
right,
anywhere, and then does that surge capacity, is that calculated based on the number of beds that they could staff or the number of beds that they have physical locations for?
It's a combination, and as they were explaining it to me, it's really really understanding the context of the spread in our community, where we're not just looking at the numbers of patients that are in isolation, for example. They're looking also at the percent of beds with percent of beds that can be higher without even causing any concern to us. And so if our numbers of cases are low in our hospital and the percent bed uses is high, that's something that they shared the rationale in terms of how those numbers can fluctuate and not cause severe alarm.
Other questions?
I have a question. This is Carol. I was unable to go to the Thursday town hall meeting due to a schedule conflict, but what is the alternative plan? Say if worst case scenario, if the hospital reaches beyond capacity, is there like a plan for a field hospital, or what's the plan?
I would lean on our folks at LMH. Erica, perhaps you've heard of a plan for my hospital?
I will not speak on behalf of LMH at this point. We can ask them to provide comment follow-up after this meeting, though.
We can, I see Dr. Lewis making a note. He, as he always does, he'll follow up for us and get that answer. I appreciate that response, Erica. That makes good sense to me. Carol, is that agreeable?
That's fine. Thank you. I would appreciate it.
Other questions, Carol?
Not at this moment.
Okay. Any other board members have questions?
This is Erica. I don't have a question. I just want to say thank you to the district. I know you've worked really, really hard on operationalizing the gating criteria. And so I just want to say thank you. Did a lot of hard work.
So Erica, you were a little soft, but what I heard was a strong thank you for the work of the administration on operationalizing the gating criteria. Is that right? Yep.
Yes, it is.
Okay, great, thanks. Other board members? We have some patron commentary around this too, so I just want folks to know that I know you're there and we'll get to you as well. Okay, if there's not any additional questions, I'm going to open it up to patron commentary. Just a second to get that list.
Shannon's trying to speak. I don't know if she's having
Oh,
some.
thanks, Dr. Stubblefield. I appreciate that. Shannon, can you get on?
What about now?
Yep.
Okay. All right, sorry. I just was trying to say to Carol that I don't believe that they answered her question during the town hall last Thursday either, just for her information, so she wasn't able to attend. Thanks.
All right, so I'm going to open it up to public commentary. And the first person on my list is Pamela Brown. Ms. Brown, are you here?
Yes, I am.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you all for having me. I appreciate it. I would like to take a moment to, before I give any additional commentary, thank you all for opening and cultivating a space for the rest of us to be able to participate in these meetings. It means a great deal, so thank you. I want to also make a note to say thank you in particular to Mr. Hyman, who spoke earlier, one of the educators, to walk us through some of his personal experience as an educator. That's incredibly valuable. My understanding as a parent is limited to my experience and the experiences of my children. So I'm always grateful for additional feedback from our educators on how they're doing. I know Lindsay Buck spoke very well about the information that she's gathered from other educators. I'm also very appreciative to her for keeping an eye out for educators and advocating for things that they need. One of the things that she had specifically commented on was the Families First Response Act. I also heard you say, Ms. Jones, that you heard a lot of call to action. So I'm very much looking forward to hearing what that looks like as far as how we as a community and how the school board is going to continue to support the teachers. My experience, my kids are both in elementary school. They're at Sunset Hill. Their experience has been a unique one in the fact that while we had signed them up for hybrid initially, when the gating criteria changed, we felt so overwhelmed with the shift that we ended up keeping them home for a few weeks. And I will make specific note that Mr. Phillip, our school administrator, our teachers, and the staff never once acted in any regard as if the thing we were doing was, selfish or unnecessary. They were so accommodating and very supportive, and I really appreciate that. And I feel very fortunate. I know that there are parents that do not have the ability to be able to keep their kids home or to shift or to adjust. And so my heart definitely goes out to them, and my heart goes out to the educators who are doing everything they can to shuffle and make things work. I really appreciate the systematizing that is happening with the gating criteria from you all. I like seeing that we're looking at different ways to weigh each of these pieces of this really intense puzzle. So I'm very grateful, very appreciative that we're not just looking at it like a blanketed statement and a list to check off, that there are certain bits and pieces that should weigh more heavily than others. So I appreciate that. I appreciate how thorough you all are trying to be. As always, my concern is, making sure that things are being put in place beyond just these conversations and making sure that people are having what they need. My number one concern is making sure that it's not just our students having what they need, but our teachers and our staff. To hear the Kansas State Board pull any potential idea of a safety net away from our elementary educators felt really brutal to me. I think that the idea that there's no possibility of a necessary remote only version for them, like they'd pulled that rug out. And so I do want to encourage you all to maybe take that into consideration as far as how you adapt your gating criteria for our school district. We can certainly use that as a compass, but we don't have to set everything exactly the way that they are. And I think to communicate to the educators that there is no safety net if you're in elementary, simply because the students are less likely to deal with symptoms. The students are, but our teachers aren't, and our staff is not. And so they still deserve to have some semblance of a safety net, that there's protection for them. So that they can continue to do their jobs. Because like what Mr. Hyman was saying earlier, this takes a lot of work. That's a lot of mental load. That's a lot of capacity for our educators and our staff. And I think that communicating to them that value, whether it's through the Families First Response Act continuing, some semblance of a net for them to know, hey, if things get really rough, we've still got your back. We're still going to make sure that you're taken care of. And again, I am saying this as a parent with two kids that are in elementary. No, it's not been easy. It's not. And I get that. And I really want to encourage the other parents that are listening this evening to recognize that our kids are going to continue to grow. They're going to continue to be resilient. They're going to continue to learn new ways to adapt. I hope that their schools are providing the support that they can in this really difficult season. And again, thank you all very much for taking the time to listen to all of us, to hear the things that we're saying. I do want to continue to support you all. I want to support the educators, but I do think that some safety nets need to be put in place for them to do their jobs to their full ability.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. It was lovely to see you. And thanks for showing up and providing us a advocacy on behalf of teachers and your students too. Appreciate that. Okay. The next speaker is Ms. Bodecker. Emily?
Yes, hello. Can you hear me?
We can. It's 7:35, so
All right. And
you're
I
on.
apologize. I probably should have spoken earlier, but it's a good piggyback off of Pam and also off of what Shane and Sarah said earlier. Hello, my name is Emily Bodeker. My pronouns are she, hers. I'm an elementary music teacher at the Pinckney and Woodlawn Elementary Schools. I'm also a parent of an elementary age kiddo at Sunset Hill. I tell you this so when I speak to my experience or what I've witnessed, you realize I'm not just at one building. I'm not just talking about one teacher, but it's 3 buildings and 20 teachers, hybrid and distance classes as both an educator and a parent. I teach 20 classes on an ABC weekly rotation between my 2 buildings. I have 14 hybrid classes and 6 distance classes. Within my hybrid classes, I have approximately 40 kiddos who attend all 4 days. Most of those are at Pinckney Elementary School. Some of those are making up entire grade levels. I gained 75-ish new students when we moved to hybrid, many from schools other than my home building. So brand new to me, brand new to my building. About a month ago, I invited the entire board to come shadow me for a day at Pinckney Elementary School. No one emailed me back except for one. Thank you, Carol. So I'm going to give you a brief synopsis of what is expected of me on a typical school day before I continue. My duty day starts at 7:30. For the sake of this exercise, I'll say we're at A week. At 7:45, I take temperatures and hand out breakfast until 8:05. My plan is from 8 to 8:45. I then take my cart full of buckets, drumsticks, various percussion instruments, boom whackers, ukuleles, parachutes, you name it, upstairs. I teach 3 hybrid classes before lunchtime with 5 minutes in between. In that 5 minutes, I am expected to clean my instruments, sanitize myself, and travel to the next classroom. Seems simple, right? I mean, by now I should probably have a pretty good system, but there's a cog in this machine. That cog is I cannot even get into some classrooms on my cart. Some of our rooms are so full of furniture that it is impossible to not only get my teaching supplies in the room, but also to remain distanced from my students. When I asked about getting smaller desks for some of our most full classrooms, I was told, quote, "There are none left in the district." This was later amended to say, well, there might be some. There's an inventory, so-and-so misspoke, we'll try to figure it out, etc. To me, this is not a satisfactory answer in December when we have had months to figure out how to distance these kids. Continuing with my day, there's a 25-minute lunch followed by 2 hybrid classes, 2 distance classes, remember that 5 minutes, and car line duty. Now to some, this might not seem so bad, but I feel like I should remind you I'm not teaching the same lesson or even the same age level. I'm teaching different standards and content to children with ages ranging from 5 to 11, all with 5 minutes to prepare. Simply put, I am exhausted at the end of the day when there isn't a pandemic. Add in all the sanitizing and lugging stuff around on my cart, running around my building, and I am beyond exhausted at the end of a week. I feel like I need to be completely clear and transparent when I say the workload right now is insane. The mental health toll is insane. The physical risks are insane. Now, I love what I do. I love my job. I love my students, schools, and families. What do I not love is that the goalposts are continually changing. It's December and we are still talking about gating criteria. It's December and I have students who have chosen distance learning for a year being told then come back to hybrid. New students being added weekly to be 4-dayers when there's simply no room in the classrooms. I broke down in a staff meeting a few weeks ago and said, I just want to know who I'm teaching when I'm in the building, and was met with little to no empathy. As a parent, I made a choice and stuck with it for the school year, and I'm baffled as to why the expectation isn't the same across the district. Just today, I was told that we're getting a student who had previously chosen distance learning, and they would be back in a hybrid classroom that I can't even get into to teach. Tell me how that makes sense. The lack of trust I feel from the district is disheartening and sad. The learning models, criteria, safety measures, and work expectations that I was originally told at the beginning of the year no longer apply. Appropriate mask wearing and proper distancing is not always happening. I hate that I can't keep our students as safe as possible. I hate that my mental health is suffering because I have to create lessons for multiple learning models, write new curriculum, and change my plans almost daily. I hate that I have whiplash after every board meeting. While hearing about this weighted criteria, I'm a little perplexed. In a week where you're now telling me we are in the yellow, that I know that there are multiple teachers out in my building and other buildings around the district putting extra strain on staff. What happens when we're in the green but there's no teachers or subs? For those who want all-in schooling, I guess I want to know what's the plan when there's no adults to teach your children? At the end of the day, I'm disheartened, and really probably more so, I'm most disheartened by the fact that I cannot sing with my elementary age students, something that is written into my curriculum and standards, but we can still have sports. To this elementary music teacher, the district's priorities have been made clear. I just have one more point. While relationships have been touted as a priority, I guess it doesn't really matter in a pandemic. It doesn't matter that elementary teachers are changing rosters 6 weeks into school. It doesn't matter that kids have to get to only know new classroom teachers, but new specialists, librarians, counselors. It doesn't matter that rosters are still changing today, next week, January, February, who knows? It doesn't matter that my level of trust in building administrators and district admins is little to none. It doesn't matter as long as we change things to fit our own narrative, except it does matter. It does matter that teachers and staff don't feel safe or heard at work. It does matter that good teachers are going to leave our district. It does matter that my job will lose the chance to have some fantastic teachers because they're into their ropes. And it does matter that teachers' physical and mental health is taking a back seat. Caring about your teachers is student-centered. I'm going to say it one more time. Caring about your teachers is student-centered. Listening to teachers is a student-centered decision. I'm here to tell you I'm not a lazy crybaby. I'm just a woman at the end of my rope. So like any other time I've spoken to you, I've come with an ask. The ask is to lead and listen, and to make expectations clear, and please stop changing them. Lead and listen and keep our students and staff safe. Lead and listen to those who are in the trenches and not in Facebook groups. We can make up lost academic time, but we can't make up lost lives or the loss of great educators. Thank you. I'm sorry for going over my time.
It's okay. Thank you, Emily. Appreciate that you came and shared your experience. We have Miss O'Connor. Miss O'Connor, Shannon, I can see.
Okay, am I here
There
now?
you go. You are. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for offering me some time. I am a proud Bobcat parent of an elementary student, and I'm an educator in my own right, although not in 497. I noted in your opening remarks, Ms. Jones, that you expressed a certain level of frustration with Keisha's decision to go against published health advice regarding sports and activities. It is in that same vein of going against published advice that I come to you and the other board members tonight. The number of person hours collectively spent on the issue of gating criteria ranges from mind-boggling to exasperating. At the end of the day, this board is not made up of public health experts, but public health experts have actually spoken. They have provided you with criteria. They have done so since July. The community is frustrated with the fact that you'd rather argue about criteria weights instead of trying to create an equitable educational environment that reduces the unrelenting work on the part of teachers and staff and the heartbreak that our students are experiencing every single day. Making these ever so minute decisions about whether to give this category 30% and this one 25% reminds me of my students in the classroom. Without fail, about 3 days before my final was scheduled, I always had at least one student come to me with a good smile and the question, what do I have to get on the final to get an A? I loved all of my students, but I also knew that for some, their goal wasn't learning for learning's sake. They wanted the grade. See, what is happening here is the opposite of the school board's mandate to enable learning in our schools. By negotiating and arguing and discussing and declaring victory over assigning one category a higher weight than any others, you appear to be just trying to make the grade, to get that extrinsic goal of being able to triumphantly declare that you knew enough to make your criteria fit. For it is not hard to see an agenda at work. Congratulations. You just once again made our students the victims of a numbers game. You are not elected as public health officials, and few will congratulate you for assuming that role. Rather than listen to the WHO, the CDC, KSDE, KDHE, and our local public health officials, you're eagerly awaiting the opportunity tonight to once again shake up the numbers, send your IT guy back to tweak the data table, and tell yourself a job well done. In the meantime, students are struggling. Students are floundering. Students are being denied. And from the sounds of it, so are your teachers. Students are not at school becoming ill from COVID. They are becoming heartsick. They are losing their innate thirst for school, and they are likely embarking on a new plague of your own making, the plague of literate non-readers, inaccurate mathematicians, and most disheartening for me as a social studies teacher, uninterested citizens. So let's focus on what matters: teachers, students, and creating an equitable learning environment. Each and every day, parents like myself across the city entrust you with their most precious persons. To that end, I and all the other parents in the district have been surveyed multiple times. Each time, based upon my expertise as the parent of my child, my ability to comprehend the risks involved based upon scientific recommendations, my expertise as an educator myself, and the trust I place in our school, I chose hybrid each and every time. The parents who chose remote only were listened to and granted all that they wished for. All I am asking is that you afford the rest of us, the rest of your constituency, the same level of respect and understanding. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. O'Connor. I appreciate it. I want to clear up one point. We did adopt the KSDE, KDHE criteria. So that actually, we have done that just for clarity and to avoid any confusion there. I believe we have other folks. Ms. Meyer, I believe. Jody, are you here?
I am.
Thank you for coming. Appreciate you being here.
You're welcome. My name is Jody Meyer. I have 3 children in USD 497, 2 of whom are at Lawrence High School, 1 of whom is at Billy Mills Middle School. I have been actively involved in my children's education, whether it be from the PTA to site council meetings. Over the years, I've actively spoken with teachers and administrators about all manner of things in their building and in the district. So trust me when I say that I know how things work in USD 497. I, like many people, wanted my children educated in Lawrence because of the reputation of quality education and the deep commitment to putting children first. Unfortunately, this district has lost its way since my oldest child first entered school here in 2008. It is clear that children are absolutely not being put first, and their education now is certainly not quality. I have heard about 1 million times now that these are unprecedented times. However, we are now over 9 months into this pandemic, and this school district acts like it is still March 13th when we learned we were first told we wouldn't have school for 2 weeks. These children have now been without meaningful learning since March 6th. I, like many others, have sat through hours of school board meetings listening to the discussion of the education of our children this school year. It sickens me to listen to the board most of the time. I have heard some of you disrespect our administration, in particular Dr. Lewis. I've heard you disrespect local health officials. I have heard you whine about not having the information you want, rather than do any research on your own or ask for it well in advance. You seem to be hyper-focused on keeping children out of school and to go to any links to support online only, and to support online only. And in particular, honestly, I'm speaking to you, Shannon Kimball, and you, Kelly Jones. The notion of changing gating criteria to whatever fits your narrative is ridiculous. Let's talk about absenteeism. How many kids are absent with nothing to do with COVID? I don't recall in the hours I've spent through school board meetings where there has been a serious conversation about what the attendance rate is or now. Do you know? Have you asked? As of today, my 8th grader has 34 unexcused absences for hours in school. 34. Maybe he logged in late, maybe he didn't log in at all. But I can tell you that none of those were COVID related, either from having COVID or being quarantined. People are frustrated. They aren't going to call in and explain what happened anymore. How does your proposal take that into account? Regarding quarantine students being counted as present, are you aware of how many people are being asked to quarantine unnecessarily? The Free State football team was a good example where they were asked to quarantine, not because they were conclusively determined to have been in close contact with an unrelated person to the team, but because it couldn't be determined who was in close contact, so everyone had to quarantine. How does making this type of analysis regarding quarantines make any sense? It was brought up tonight, surge capacity for the hospital. Are you aware that back in November, the disease specialist, Jennifer Crimsher, showed projections of a 500% increase in inpatients by December 1st. That did not happen at all. In fact, it was, I think, less or the same as what it was. We made that prediction. And yet we're still we're having conversations tonight about field hospitals, when according to LMH information today, that number is, I think, 23 people at LMH. Do you realize now, particularly at the high school level, how many kids are actually in the building? My senior in high school, who's going one piddly day a week, had 2 or 3 out of 7 hours where he's the only person in class. Let me repeat that. The only one in class. The most he had in any class with him was 4 other students. These kids don't even see a point in going in person because it's almost meaningless to be there in person. Why aren't we having discussion about making things better? Why aren't we talking about tutoring and helping kids who have Fs right now? Do we need substitutes? Why aren't we talking about organizing a drive to get people to sign up to be substitutes? Just last week, I submitted all the paperwork to the Kansas Department of Education to become an emergency substitute teacher. I am normally a single mom who's a practicing attorney. I am one of these people who have parents who live in Lawrence who are high risk. So I have the grandparents that everybody is worried about. This matters enough to me that I am willing to put myself in the position where I go into a building to get these kids in person. I volunteer to be in the smallest classroom, in the smallest school in Lawrence as a substitute so they can go to school. That's what I'm willing to do at probably $100 a day, if most. I'm willing to put my money where my mouth is to get these kids back in school. I ask you, what are you doing to make things better? And I'm not asking that as a rhetorical question. Do you know that almost every expert in this country, whether it be from the far left to the far right of the political spectrum, now acknowledges that kids need to be in person in school? Every one of you who does not stand up for meaningful in-person learning needs to resign immediately from this board. You are doing a disservice to every child in the district. You are not doing the duties for which you were elected. You need to explain the reasoning for your positions. I do want to say thank you to Erica Hill, Melissa Johnson, and Paula Smith, who seem to understand the needs of our children and advocate for them. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Meyer. I appreciate that and the feedback and the request that we focus on making a better educational outcome for our students. Also want to thank you for volunteering or signing up to sub. I admire that. Thank you. All right, so Maria Pope, Ms. Pope.
Hello. My video should be on. I can't tell.
I don't think it's on, but we can definitely hear you. Oh, wait,
Okay.
Here you come.
Okay, I turned it off, turned it on. Okay. Again, I probably should have spoke earlier, but I'm Maria Pope, and I'm a Muskogee Creek. And in my 24th year as an educator for Lawrence Public Schools, I have never felt the need to come before the school board to speak on any topic. However, I feel that in our present circumstances, it is time to speak out. First, I'd like to thank you for your time, your service, and for the difficult job in front of you. I want to thank my administrators at Billy Mills Middle School, Dr. Taylor and Dr. Miles, for their support. I find it difficult to put all my thoughts, beliefs, and emotions into a concise and accurate manner. In an effort to do so, I will touch on phrases I seem to have said numerous times: students, respect, safety, distrust, and lack of understanding. Students are in the forefront of all that I do. Please understand that anything I say is because I love my students and my profession. This year has been undeniably tough. The level of distrust in the process has grown over this school year. I had faith in the gating criteria until it changed in the last minute, leaving me to feel like Charlie Brown trying to kick the ball Lucy was holding. Distrust was a result of this change. I want my students back in class. I miss seeing their faces. I miss the nuances of each student, and students want to be back in class. However, until you actually experience a student having to leave class due to losing a grandparent to COVID, you will never understand the impact. It was heartbreaking. Then reality sets in. How did the family member contract the virus? Had the student brought it home? Not only does online learning protect students and teachers, it protects extended family members. Safety. Safety is vital for all involved. I wear scrubs to school. I know it's extreme, but I do that so I can immediately wash my clothes upon returning home. I I have medical issues that put me at a higher risk for complications if I were to contract COVID-19. And yet I come and teach in circumstances that are more stressful than I have ever experienced in my years of teaching. I feel as though I'm spinning plates all day long. Plates of I'm pulled into multiple directions. I'm trying to make sure students can hear what's being said while remoting into class, trying to make sure my in-person and at-home learners understand learning objectives and assignments, troubleshooting students with connectivity issues, and students who are struggling with the new reality of education. My attention is constantly split, meeting the needs of my in-person learners and making sure my remote learners have what they need to be successful. This is my everyday. Thus, when the hybrid supporting learning model I feel was a lack of understanding for what happens on a day-to-day basis for students and educators, it's easy to sit from a distance and make decisions. It has been offered before, and I have never been taken up on it, and I'll offer again. Come and spend a full day in a class of hybrid learning, not 10 minutes, not an hour. Get a full day to see what one day is composed of. See the frustrations and struggles firsthand. It isn't all bad. Students are doing great with the challenges they face. However, the stress and toll involved in having a long-term negative impact on teacher morale and mental health. It is clear and obvious that students' health is important. And let's remember, the mental health of teachers is also important. The district needs healthy and supported teachers so they are able to take care of their students' education and support their mental health needs. In conclusion, educators are tired, but I want to keep it personal, local, and immediate. I am tired. I always do what is best when there's no perfect solution right now. I am tired from feeling like we are not being heard or validated. I am tired for not feeling like we are doing enough. I am tired from not feeling safe, respected, understood, or that we matter too. I am tired from fighting to stay afloat. While making your decision, remember, teachers are tired and need to be supported. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pope. I appreciate that you took time to come out with us, given what your day is like and your service to our district. Thank you. Josh Bradlin, are you with us, Josh?
Hello?
Hey, thanks for coming, Josh.
Sure. Thank you for having me. My name is Josh Bradlin, and I am speaking tonight for myself. I work at Liberty Memorial Central Middle School, and I am a proud Mustang. I wanted to speak tonight on the challenges and successes of this school year, as well as my thoughts on our current situation. Let me start with the successes so far this school year. Some students with challenging needs are being very successful in remote learning, and remote is working for many students. Educators are continuing to try new technologies and instructional strategies as they redesign traditional education. This will benefit students and teachers long after this year. Some students are very happy to be back in the building, learning and socializing with friends. The smaller class sizes allow teachers to more easily work with students in small groups or one-on-one. Some of the challenges that we've seen is that there is uncertainty, not knowing where students and staff have been, and is COVID following you home? Are you sacrificing yourself while others around you don't abide by safety protocols? Students often report to staff how they spent their weekends and breaks, sometimes revealing gathering with friends and extended family or traveling out of state. There have been several attendance struggles. Attendance numbers are not showing how many students and staff are sick. Counting a kid present when they show up for 5 minutes of a 95-minute class is not fair to other students. Add on not knowing what students are in what situation adds to stress. Planning and teaching is challenging, and not knowing who is quarantining makes it hard to accommodate. Having absenteeism in the gating criteria could be useful, but that isn't complete. Hybrid kids have chosen to stay home and are getting an incomplete education. Students have chosen to stay home during this time of increased spread are getting the same lessons on back-to-back days. The only way around this is to try and teach both in-person and remote learners at the same time, which doesn't make sense logically. One of the classes I teach is 8th grade science. My colleague and I have to plan 6 different lesson plans to try and teach in order to make sense for students. The hybrid schedule is hard to juggle. Teachers feel a need to continue instruction for all students in the classroom and online, but the workload is too much and can't be sustained. Keeping expectations of social distancing and mask on is draining for staff and students. Teachers have to consistently tell students to maintain 6 feet of social distancing. There are 10 to 20-minute restroom breaks given during class so that students can wash their hands and use the facilities. Teachers are doing their best at trying to have students meet these new expectations, but it's also difficult when you see a student struggling and you choose between protecting your own health and what is innate in your desire to help them. I wanted to share some of these successes and challenges we have had during this year, in middle school, and close on my own thoughts. I do not believe that what we are doing is sustainable. We have seen an increase and now a sustained amount of cases in our county over the last several weeks. November 12th, we had 649 cases. We currently have 967 active cases as of today. That is an increase of 33% in a month. Looking at the district's gating criteria, we have been in the yellow tier. Looking around the country, state, and community, does it feel like we should be in the second tier of 4? I don't believe it does because we don't live in a bubble. Experts have said that even with the arrival of the vaccine, it will still be 3 to 6 months before it is widely available. I caution about acting too quickly and easing back into 100% full time. I wanted to thank you for letting me speak tonight, and have a good evening.
Thank you, Josh. I appreciate your service to the district. And your advice as a science teacher. Dr. Lewis, I think moving back into the gating criteria, were there additional information that you would like us to have, or anything else you'd want to add?
Yeah, I think we were good just sharing the weightings with the board.
Okay. All right. So based on the patron feedback, it seems like there was some common theme, regardless of positioning, around district approach, around how we can create a better experience for our students. And I understand that you'll be making some shifts or looking at some ways to do that. Is that something you'd like to bring to the board, perhaps at the next board meeting, to talk a little bit about the things that you're doing to address some of the issues that have been raised to support both teachers and students?
Yes, and we are aware of some of the challenges as it relates to the hybrid and in-person environment. I've been in classes and I've seen it done well, and I've seen there are some challenges there as well, and talked to some teachers in terms of what's needed to improve. That's one of the things that I want to listen for as well as I begin my meetings with groups of teachers at all buildings to just learn more in terms of what's needed to continue to support them as we move to bringing our students back when conditions warrant.
Thank you, Dr. Lewis. Erica and I can work with you on adding that to a future agenda. So I really appreciate the timing of meeting with the teachers. That will be helpful and help get to both what the parents were reporting and the educators. Okay, so we're going to move to the next agenda item. Oh, excuse me, before we move, I did not have my other screen open, so I apologize. There is a recommendation for a motion. Thank you for pointing that out, Dr. Lewis. Is there a board member that would like to make the recommendation for the motion?
This is Paula. I'll make the motion. I move the Board of Education adopt criteria and weightings the superintendent will use to determine what learning model the district will implement each week. The superintendent is authorized to determine whether students will be attending school in person in a hybrid model, or in a complete remote model.
Is there a second?
Erica, I'll second that.
And just for the clarity for people that are watching, Dr. Lewis, the motion, the gating criteria that you will be utilizing, we passed last Thursday, is the KSDE, KDHE criteria, and what we're passing tonight is how you're operationalizing it, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. All right, Elise.
Hill,
Yes.
Kadu Blackwood,
Yes.
Gordon Ross,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Kimball, Smith,
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-1.
Could I offer an explanation?
Absolutely.
Okay, thanks. I just wanted to share that while I am pleased that the district is using the KDHE criteria,
I'm not sure. I can't.
We lost you,
hear.
Shannon.
Shannon. Yeah, thank you, Paula.
can you hear me now? Okay, apologies. I'm having a little trouble with my technology. What I wanted to say is that I am pleased that we are adopting the KDHE, KSDE criteria. I am pleased that we are weighting those criteria. My no vote is based on the continued concerns that I have heard from both sides, some of which we heard tonight, some of which we heard in our COVID advisory committee, that our absentee data is simply not a reliable data point to include. And while I understand that it is one of the things that KDHE and KSDE recommended, I do not support using it as part of our criteria in our district because of those problems with the data. So I just wanted to clarify that that's the reason for my no. Thank you.
Thank you, Shannon. I can appreciate that point. All right, so moving on, we will move on to new business. And I believe on the eve of her birthday, Dr. Stubblefield is presenting. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
You want me to start?
Yeah. Yep,
Okay.
We're ready.
Okay, good evening. The next item up is for some modifications to the calendar after the winter break. Last week on December 8th, the state board voted to allow professional development hours to count towards to count fully towards the student attendance hours requirement. And during a discussion with the negotiations COVID subcommittee, in an attempt to address some of the workload issues prior to students returning after winter break, we wanted to leverage some of that time to address some of the things that we can, recognizing that those two days won't fix all of the challenges, but it will give us an opportunity to address what we can. So we are proposing to add 2 professional development days, January 5th and 6th. When that was shared, we did hear from some of our high school staff that shortening the semester will cause some challenges with their planned instruction. So in conjunction with adding the 2 PD days, we're proposing to extend first semester. So first semester was originally slated to end on January 15th. Now with the holiday being on Monday, the 18th, it would end on January 20th. Students would have finals at the high school on Friday, January 15th, and then they would have finals on the 19th and 20th in the morning to try to balance the different requests. So those calendar adjustments, I know Julie Boyle, along with the calendar committee chairs, have the calendar ready to publish if the board votes to approve the additions and the modifications.
So Dr. Stubblefield, the issue presented, when we had a number of teachers contact us and say that they have very tightly scripted the last part of their their semester, and I get that. I have been there. So in doing this, they will not lose days in their semester leading up to the final, but there would be a longer break over winter break, correct? I mean, their instructional days would be the same, essentially.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, we extended the semester by 2 days since the PD was added on the back end of winter break.
Okay. Other board members have questions?
Yes, I just wanted to clarify whether the calendars that are attached in board docs show that shift, Dr. Stubblefield.
I don't know if, because we were meeting late this afternoon, I don't know if we got them to Elise or not. I can check with Sam Marie and Julie. I will try to pull it up now. The one that was there this morning, if it's the same one, probably does not. Elise, did you get a new calendar?
Yes, I updated it.
Okay.
So, Dr. Stubblefield, I'm looking at the calendar that's currently attached to board docs for teachers and staff, and so on to the middle and high school for January, it still says Q2 ends on January 15th. So what you're saying is that the proposal is to have Q2 end on January 20th?
Middle school still will end on January 15th. We did not hear from middle school teachers, and when we reached out to middle school principals, they said for the middle school teachers would want to start their second semester on that Tuesday after the Martin Luther King holiday. So the semester would end for middle school on Friday and for high school that following Wednesday.
Okay. I'll just offer, I think that the calendars that are attached in board docs are confusing in regard to what the proposal is for us to adopt. So, Kelly, if we're gonna,
the one I'm looking at is not the updated one. And it just may be because my computer is not refreshed, but I can check with Julie or Samry to see. Oh, Elise didn't receive the new calendar. She just updated in the formatting ones. So she hasn't received them yet. I will check with Julie and Samry.
okay, can I make a suggestion about the motion then, Kelly?
Sure, please.
Can we write out and specify the changes that Dr. Stubblefield just outlined, since the attachments don't fully reflect the changes as they currently stand?
Oh, because we're not looking at the
for the high school piece.
Yeah. Elise, can you attach those, Elise? Or
I'll forward them to her right now. Sorry about that.
it's okay.
This is Erica. I have a question whenever we're ready.
Yeah, why don't you go ahead, Erica?
Okay, can you hear me okay? I don't speak really
Yeah, it's just a little bit soft, but when you're speaking, you know, I can hear you. If I'm not clear, I'll ask for to verify I heard it right.
Okay, I pulled it a little bit closer. So adding the 2 days to the semester, so we're not going to lose any instruction time during the first semester.
For high school, correct.
High school.
Yeah.
So what about the second semester? I guess my question is, are we losing 2 days of instruction for our students?
Yes, we would be, but the second semester is always longer than the first semester. So it doesn't completely balance it out, but it brings it closer, because first semester, just the way the calendar falls, is always a little short. But overall, for your elementary, yeah, you lose 2 days because you're adding the PD days. And the state board passed that, recognizing the workload of the staff and the changes this year, that they're just honoring that there has to be time for more professional development and time for teachers to apply what they're doing or put together whatever needs to be put together in order for them to instruct. So yeah, you would lose 2 days of instruction.
This is Carol. I'm having trouble hearing Erica, so I just anyway.
Thank you, Carol. I think Erica has a follow-up question, so you want to jump in, Erica?
Yeah. So, Dr. Stubblefield, what does PD look like? So, what will be gained in 2 days of PD? That's my question.
So at the elementary level, one of the things, if you heard from teachers, is the challenge of providing instruction for students who are hybrid students who also they could be quarantined or they could be choosing because the gating criteria state to be hybrid. We did purchase Florida Virtual School that would offer, that would give academic platform for them to make some academic progress and give teachers feedback. So that's one component of what the professional development at elementary will look like. It will also give the teachers an opportunity to collaborate around best practices for what's working for some or some of the challenges. And then each building has some time built in to deal with specific issues that are coming up within their building, that the administration will work with their building leadership teams and their learning coaches to tailor it to what they need. At the high school level, again, it will provide the content area teachers an opportunity to collaborate because they have their plan time and some PD on Wednesdays, but they don't have large chunks of time just naturally built in the schedule to collaborate. And so it will provide that opportunity, but it also, a reality that we have is the individualized plans of study, some training that we have to provide on that. It's about an hour. And so it's some of those technical things, but the bulk of the time really would be focused on some of the challenges that the teachers have expressed and problem solving around that so that they would have time to put things in place and collaborate with their colleagues as we finish out the semester and go into second semester.
Thank you.
Has a question.
So Dr. Stubblefield, per Sarah's question earlier during commentary, would it be something that you either have or would consider during that elementary school PD to allow some of the remote teachers to get together and collaborate just among themselves for some best practice, as opposed to just getting together on the building level, but for them specifically as remote teachers to get together?
Yes, because the remote teachers have already had the Schoology and Florida virtual training. And then when they are building based, they're in 2 cohorts. So yes, they absolutely will have that time to collaborate as well.
And so I have a follow-up question. So giving these 2 extra days of professional development, is this moving toward the plan for fully in-person instruction? Is that part of what this is about? Or is this continuing hybrid and how to make hybrid better? Or I'm trying to get a better understanding of
So the instruction components would be focused on whether it was hybrid or in person, because good teaching, practice, and instruction, it would just have to be balanced. But right now, some of the most immediate needs is balancing the hybrid with students who are in different variations. Whether we were 100% or hybrid, the fact of the matter, probably the rest of the school year, we're going to have students who are supposed to be in person that will be in quarantine. So how do you provide that instruction? So in that case, that is the hope of it, for teachers to have that time to collaborate around those things and to really try to address some of those most immediate needs. And as I stated at the very beginning, it's not going to fix all of the challenges, but it will provide some time that it's currently not available just because of the way the schedule falls, the teachers and educators and our classified staff will be a part of those 2 days of professional development as well. But it'll just give some time that is needed, and not necessarily, we can't carve it out whether you're teaching remote or hybrid, because during the duty day you have students with the exception of your allocated plan times.
Anna, I may have missed it. Could you repeat what they're receiving, what kind of supports teachers are receiving now?
Receiving?
Yeah, in terms of what you just said, balancing hybrid with student variations and addressing student engagement. Do they have, go ahead.
Right now at the elementary level, they have the brick and mortar teachers, not the distance teachers, have 120 minutes of PD each Wednesday, and they have some additional plan time. However, they don't have large chunks of time to provide. One of the things we think that will help with students in quarantine, or because our elementary students only have 3 check-ins, and if they miss them, if they are set up through Florida virtual school, parents can at least log in and they can make progress in the core content areas based off the priority standards, which will give the teachers some data points around what they're doing. And in that case, teachers are not necessarily burdened with providing multiple lessons. And also for those students who are attending 4 days a week, that in some cases teachers are replicating their instruction, just because if you have a group of students on Monday and a different group of students on Tuesday, you may be doing a similar lesson. It would allow them some independent time when they're reviewing things that may have happened Monday, but in a way that will give them some authentic feedback, is our hope around that. So I honestly, I high level know what's happening in PD, but Patrick Kelly and the curriculum instruction team are the ones who actually plan the PD with them. So I'm speaking at very high level on my understanding.
Paula, would you like us to see if we can get that brought back to you from a synopsis brought back to you from Patrick Kelly or others, and we could present to the whole board?
Yeah, I think that'd be helpful.
Are there other questions?
This is Erica. I just have another thought, comment, question. And I don't expect anyone to answer this. I'm just wanting to be transparent with where I am right now. We received, I know I've received a number of emails from our teachers talking about workload, and a lot of them have gone into detail on what all they have to do, and I appreciate that, and that really opened my eyes and gave me a new perspective. This conversation, I'm struggling with what is the reward of 2 professional development days versus the risk of our students losing 2 days of instruction? Like, that's where I'm risk reward. That's where and again, I don't expect anyone to answer that given the.
Yeah. But Erica, I can offer the risk reward is one of the things that any research you see around the student achievement is based off ongoing job embedded on-time professional development. And we've heard from our teachers that, balancing, none of them have taught during a pandemic. So adding this time like naturally onto a break, so that when the students return, that they feel a little more equipped. I'm not saying that it will cover the multitude of challenges that are being faced, but it will provide some time for them to gain some skills, work with their colleagues in a large chunk of time, and then be ready to do provide that instruction or what they've gained with the students to hopefully help lessen their workload a little bit, so that they can be more effective. Several of them shared, the multiple things and how they're balancing them, and and then some are doing some things that others may not have thought about, but it just will provide some of that time to collaborate around it so that they can be a little better, or in a little better place when students return, knowing that they have the opportunity to set up for the return of the students.
And in addition to that, and I have this question about the Florida virtual school. I just want to, what you just said really resonated with me, and I appreciate that feedback. So we are right now, there are teachers that are not able to access that because of a PD issue, right? And finding time for them to, and so I think you said that this could be part of those days, and that would allow for better instruction on the hybrid days. Is that correct? As one component, I think you said that. I just want to make sure I heard that in addition.
Yeah, and that's what I said, and that's me narrowly knowing and understanding Florida virtual. But it will give teachers an option around that based off priority standards for students. But yes, that is definitely there. It will also help in the cases, I'm speaking specifically to elementary, when students are quarantined and that type of thing, when they only can log in maybe a couple of times a day, or if they are actually ill, it's still a way for them to make progress on those priority standards in the core content areas.
Okay, so that also includes Schoolology, right? Or
Schoolology is the learning management system in which Florida Virtual, which is the curriculum resources embedded. But yes, okay. So those two things, that's a learning curve for all of our elementary students, and the way that the PD is set up now, it wouldn't have been able to be. And some buildings have been able to carve out some time, but with the PD 120, it was not going to happen until like February. But what I heard from elementary representatives on the COVID subcommittee, if they could set it up at the beginning of January, that will allow teachers. That's one less things that teachers have to try to figure out once students return.
Okay, I thought that's what I heard. Okay, thank you so much. Other questions from board members?
So I just got a message from Patrick, and it says they are working quickly on a full plan that will include instructional strategies for hybrid and remote learning. Additionally, the learning coaches and curriculum team are providing choice sessions that can be accessed online based on teachers' self-identified needs. So that's a part of it as well.
Thank you, Patrick.
This is Erica. So the focus is going to be on hybrid and remote and nothing on fully in person on transitioning?
So no, so the reality of it is our teachers know how to teach in full in person. I mean, that's what they do. What they're not used to is the remote and the hybrid. The full in person is really dependent upon Douglas County, the spacing, our gating criteria. If those markers are hit, whatever they are, our teachers are prepared to teach all the kids in front of them because that's what they do. I mean, that's what they've done their entire careers. That's what they were trained for. So transitioning would just be more around, okay, now you had 10 kids, so now you have 20 when it's safe. That type of thing, I think our teachers are more equipped to do. I think when I hear parents saying, what is the plan, is more about what's the target date to get them in, not necessarily what's the professional development that teachers need to do that, if that makes sense.
That does. So in your opinion, these 2 days, the teachers will be able to figure out a way to like work through their workloads maybe decrease or at least troubleshoot, problem solve, and then learn how to transition between modes of instruction in 2 days?
They will be better off than they are without the 2 days. Yes. I'm not saying it's going to fix everything and that there still will not be workload issues. There will still be workload issues. There were workload issues prior to the pandemic. They're just enhanced and very different now. So it will address some of them. And our hope is to some extent alleviate some part of it. But it's not a magic wand. It's not gonna fix all the different things and all the different experiences. For some it may, and for some it may not. And that's just the reality of it.
There are teachers who have successfully been able to manage both learning environments, both hybrid and remote. So when I think about the Patron Commentary, Shane and the another person, they were talking about showing us and doing a walkthrough of their daily workload. So when I think about the PD, that's the kind of thing that they will be talking about and addressing and getting a better handle on their workload, right?
Yes, that is absolutely the hope. Because there are different people who have tried different things and they have been successful. There are different people who have tried things and not been successful. And a part of that and a part of their choice sessions will allow them the time to look at that, explore, and gear up for the remainder of after the first of the year, for the remainder of the semester and moving forward.
Additional questions?
Kelly, I don't have a question. I just wanted to note my thanks to our board clerk for updating the item in board docs with the updated calendar attachments. Thank you.
Thanks, Elise.
Kelly, my PDF decided not to pull it up. It keeps giving me a different file name. Do you think someone could pull it up on the screen?
Yeah.
Thanks.
Anna, could you share it?
So mine's is not on this computer screen, but I will pull it up to somebody else.
Sorry.
It's on my iPad over here because I'm trying to balance.
I can probably pull it up if I refresh my screen too.
Okay.
Actually, that's a really bad idea. I won't be able to navigate all the GRDU. Okay. We'll figure this out, Paula.
I'll add the PDF versions in just a moment if that'll help.
Thank you, Elise.
Paula, that might help your issues because right now they're Excel files. That might be why you can't pull them up.
Yep, I just noticed that. Thanks, Shannon. That will be a big help.
Okay. I will try to, well, I don't have the option to share. I will try to share now.
You refresh, the PDFs are updated.
Paul, are you able to see it? And others?
Perfect. Thanks, Elise.
Can you see my screen now?
Yes.
You can see my screen.
Mhm.
So here the calendar shows that January 15th, the middle school in will have a full day of finals. I mean, they do their different schedule. And then the 18th is the Martin Luther King holiday. And then the 19th and 20th would be the high school finals, AM only. And that's common each year. And then the PD days are January 5th and 6th. January 4th was already a day, it's a planned day for high school and I believe elementary. Those things were already in place. And then middle school has PD on the 4th. And that was already scheduled like that. So does that help? Sorry that I didn't get that to Elise. That was totally my fault. Julie sent it to me and I was like, oh, it looks good, and didn't pass it along. So I apologize. Any other questions for me? Okay.
Thanks, Dr. Stubbleton. Is there a motion? Anyone want to make a motion?
Oh, I'll make the motion. I move the Board of Education vote to recommend the changes to the 2021 school calendar to include 2 professional learning days.
Is there a second?
This is Shannon, I second.
Kimball,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Hill,
Can you come back to me?
gotcha. Kadu Blackwood,
Yes.
Gordon Ross, Gordon Ross,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Hill.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Okay.
Say something
Yeah.
about my vote, please.
Sure.
So I understand the notion and the research that says that, and it makes sense that we have to have teachers who we have to invest in our teachers, and by investing in our teachers, we're investing in our students. So I understand the notion. I understand that. Where I'm feeling a rub is not supporting our teachers. I've never not supported our teachers, but the fact that our students have not been getting, they haven't been in school the way they need to be in school. And so that's where I'm going out on faith that these 2 days are going to help our teachers prepare, it's going to invest in them so they can invest in our students. But I am having a real rub with this one, knowing that we've heard from our parents over and over again that their students are not doing well. And it's to no fault of the teachers, it's the circumstances, but they're not doing well. And we just removed 2 more days of instruction from them.
So Erica, I feel you on that too, and it's something that I kind of toiled with, and hopefully, I don't know if sharing this will help. One of the reasons why I made that decision is because I know, like, as a teacher, like, we have these curriculum things that we're doing, and like, we have a new program that we're supposed to switch to, and we're learning right now asynchronously because originally it was supposed to be embedded in our PD. But it's not happening. So that, and then just being able to have that question and answer. And then, like, sometimes with me, like, I think
really made me make that decision is thinking about like students who come in like tired, and like when we're in a physical space, and like there are times when I've let students sleep until 10 o'clock, but when I came back, when they woke up, they were able to really absorb and hear the lesson, versus if I would have made them stay awake, they would have heard some things, but they probably wouldn't have internalized it as much. So I'm thinking about like those 2 days, even though it's not going to change the world, allow teachers to be a little more effective in as if they weren't getting those 2 days at all. Does kind of help a little bit?
That does. I appreciate that. And I appreciate all the context that Dr. Stubblefield provided as well. And I don't regret my vote. That's not what I'm saying. I just wanted to give some context to why I voted the way I voted.
Kelly, can I offer one point of clarification before you move on?
Sure, please.
The distance learning teachers' time will be a combination of them working together and then them also connecting with their homeschool just with some of the stuff that is happening. So all of their time won't just be with them collaborating with, but there is some time built in for them to do that. I just wanted to share that.
All right, thank you for the clarification, and appreciate Erica and Melissa's comments. And we will now move on to, I believe we're moving into a brief executive session.
Legislative priorities, Kelly.
Oh, it's a good thing Dr. Lewis is right by me this evening. I'm really trying to make this meeting short after some of the feedback I've gotten, so sorry to rush things. So legislative priorities. I've asked Shannon to give us an update on the legislative priorities. Paula and I have also seen these as part of the policy committee. And Shannon has done work on educational policy here locally, but also has some expertise at the state level and national level. So we're lucky to have you in that capacity. And I'm going to stop and let you share with us a little bit about the legislative priorities, and then we will move to hopefully approve those.
Thank you, Kelly.
Sorry. I know, Shannon, you're going to talk. Do you want me to ask my question before or after?
About the legislative priorities, Melissa?
Yes.
I'm just going to give a quick overview of how these got pulled together so that everybody's aware, and then I'll be happy to answer all the questions.
I jumped right away to getting them approved, Melissa, so I can understand why you asked that. But we'll give Shannon a chance to tell us a little bit about them and then open it up for questions. Yeah.
And I'll make it quick. So the process that we went through this year, I took last year's board approved legislative priorities and reviewed the state level priorities that the KASB Legislative Committee had put together, added a special section to our set of pre-approved priorities from last year to really focus on some issues that are unique to this school year because of the pandemic. Those are the three sections that are at the top of this year's legislative priority document. Very little changed in the rest of the priorities because, as you can see, there's the 2021 special priority issues, and then the remainder of the document is titled Continuing Priority Issues. And upon review and discussion of those with the policy committee, it seemed that we have a number of issues that continue to be discussed, come up year after year after year with the legislature, and I do not feel that any substantial changes were necessary to that section. We discussed the entire package in policy committee and took that feedback, incorporated that, and then sent that on to board officers and to Dr. Lewis for review. And I'm not, I don't know as much about that process, but if anyone wants to speak to that, that would be great. So that's the process we used. As you can see, particularly as it regards to funding and some flexibility and mental health needs, those were the main the three main special priority categories that we pulled into this year's set of priorities. We always, for those board members who are new, we always need to approve these before the end of the calendar year because the legislative session usually starts either at the same time or right before our first January meeting. And we typically, in a normal year, would have an opportunity to present these to our legislative delegation at a gathering that takes place usually the Friday before the legislative session starts. I don't think that they are doing that this year, but the timing is so that we have an opportunity to get those to our legislators before the session begins. That's all I have. Thank you.
Melissa, do you have questions?
Yeah, well, I had a question because I was looking at the top three, and maybe it's just, it says support for successful in-person and remote learning environments, but I feel like that is only addressing the remote learning. So is that
Melissa, the universal broadband piece that actually is in there because it has been an issue even for our students when we are fully in person. We've made a lot of efforts in our district to expand access for our students that don't have it at home, kind of closing that homework gap, even in a normal year. Certainly KASB and NSBA through their advocacy have focused very heavily on trying to move the needle on state and federal level policies that would expand access both during the pandemic, but also in recognition that that homework gap exists even when we are in fully in-person learning environments. Is that helpful?
Sorry, I'm getting myself back. Advocates continues passion. Well, it says during and after pandemic. I guess that's probably as cool.
Would you like a stronger edit in there, Melissa, related to the issue as it exists outside of the pandemic?
Yeah, because I want to make sure we're, like I see what Shannon's saying about like there's still going to be that need even afterwards to address like, quality, internet, etc., to help with that, closing that gap. But maybe we can have, get my brain.
That's an easy edit for us. We can actually make that edit. I'm trying to think of how to make that edit for you in the moment so that we can pass if we're able to pass the legislative.
Could I suggest that just to clarify, inserting the language to support the learning needs of students and families, and then insert right there in both in-person and remote learning environments.
Is there a way to
during and after the pandemic?
Is there a way to acknowledge that this issue existed pre-pandemic? To really hit with Melissa's point about the focus being extending beyond
and all
issues
for more funding or support for the school.
Well, the issue is that it's not just funding for districts. It has a lot to do with state and federal policy on building out networks and how those networks, how providers use existing networks.
So supporting our.
It's a community-based policy change.
Right.
In addition to the district level benefit from it. The access issue.
Yes.
And I can say as a social worker, it's been a huge issue for about a decade. I'm trying to edit and talk at the same time. Are there additional questions while we look at that one? see. Perhaps.
Kelly, would it be helpful to say something about advocates for continued expansion of support for I was trying to capture the idea of that, that this predated the pandemic without making it overly wordy. So for pre-existing and continued, no, that doesn't make sense.
I think the issue might be in the heading, actually. Because I can see why Melissa zeroed in on that. And I do think there's a way to amend that heading to be more inclusive of the issue itself. And we can take a 5-minute break to do that. And go ahead, Dr. Lewis.
Yeah, I agree. I think it may be in the heading. We definitely need support for remote learning environment. When I think of in-person environment, obviously, our teachers have been there, done that in terms of in-person. What I think will address, what Melissa is talking about, not only the impact of this pandemic, but I think where it may be addressed is in the school finance formula, because there are some things that's going to happen after this pandemic that we're going to need support on in terms of making up these academic losses, in terms of students. It's interesting, this state does not fund for summer school. We think about additional days that we would need to, to support our students beyond the normal academic year. So I think the finance formula may address some of those concerns. Melissa, what are your thoughts?
Yes, I'm horrible with wording. Like trying to word such as that, but
I'm sorry, Melissa.
That's why it was more like, is it a matter of just support, or is it a funding to provide that funding to help address?
Is it possible for Paula and Shannon and I to take to get a breakout room, to take a 5-minute break here to do that, or we can use the executive session link? Would that be helpful? Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to ask for a break until 9 o'clock, and have Paula and Shannon, if you could meet me in the executive session room, and make sure that you mute and close your camera in this view. Is that okay?
Yep. Sounds good.
Can you hear me now? Okay. I think if we can, I hear what you said, Shannon, about the funding formula. I get that. Is it possible that we could change the heading so that?
Kelly, you're in the main session.
Okay. Thank you so much. I might continue to be in the main session. Just one second. Sorry for the confusion, everybody. Okay. I think we're back. Shannon's back, Paula's back. So Melissa, we made a pretty minor change, and I don't know if it's going to get to what you were requesting or not. Shannon or Paula, because I was having trouble with my document, would one of you please jump in? I think Shannon was actually doing the editing.
Right. So in order to take the focus off of the different learning environments, because really those 2 bullet points go to offering higher quality opportunities to our students, regardless of what learning mode that they're in. We took the suggestion of editing the heading to change it to say support for high quality learning opportunities. And so that encompasses learning opportunities that are supported by good access to broadband, regardless of what mode of instruction students are accessing their education through. The piece about instructional hours, that really has more to do with the issue of a lack of flexibility to really promote and implement the best pedagogy when you are doing remote learning. It's just so we thought by changing the heading, it kind of took the focus away from it being just about one kind or the other, but it's more about doing the best regardless of which mode of learning that our students are in. Does that help address your concern sufficiently, Melissa?
See if it, I guess it was refreshed, but I think that
we didn't edit the document in Board Docs yet.
It's okay. Yeah. So can you read what you're suggesting as a heading?
So the heading, instead of what it says now, the heading for that section would say support for high quality learning opportunities.
Okay.
This is Carol, but I think it would behoove this board to added something about the Kansas enforcement.
So Carol, there is something in here about funding.
Mm-hmm.
And that has to do with, it's under the tax policy in the school finance formula section in the continuing priorities, where it talks about how the two have to work together to fully support an equitable and adequate system of support for schools, and then advocating for a stable, reliable, adequate, and equitable funding of the current school finance formula.
Yeah, I
so
see
that would be
I see that, but if we just put that in there to enforce it.
If we added the historical context, Carol, with the
correct.
Would it get at your concern, Carol, if it said the current school finance formula as approved by the Gannon Court?
That would be lovely.
And then, Melissa, can we go back to, I don't know if we adequately addressed your concerns.
No, yeah.
Works. It does. It works.
Okay, so as of right now, based on those 2 suggestions, the changes that would be made would be to change the heading, the second heading on page 1 to say support for high quality learning opportunities. And then on page 2, the first bullet under the Kansas tax policy heading would be edited to add the words as approved by the Gannon Court, and Gannon would be underlined because that's a
the Kansas Supreme,
the title of the
decision.
Right. So to add the words as approved by the Gannon Court, comma, after the end of that first line, equitable funding of the current school finance formula, comma, as approved by the Gannon Court, comma, and encourages the legislature, the rest of the language being the same.
Beautiful. Okay.
Other questions or concerns about the policy platform? Okay, is there a motion to adopt it?
So do we say I move to adopt the legislative priorities pending the changes? Accurate, pending revisions.
Melissa, you could say with the amendments.
Oh, with the amendment, that's
with the amendments identified.
Yes,
by
I
the
knew it
board.
was something.
And then I will send those amendments to Elise just as soon as we are out of the meeting so she can update what's on board docs.
So I move Board of Education approve the 2021 legislative priorities with the amendments adopted, or I don't need that.
With the amendments as discussed.
With the proposed amendments or amendments as, okay, I'm gonna do it one more time. Take 2 or 3. I move the Board of Education approve the 2021 legislative priorities with the amendments discussed.
Is there a second?
It's
This
GR,
is Carol. I
second.
second. Oh, beat me to it.
Jones?
Yes.
Gill?
Yes.
Padu Blackwood?
Yes.
Gordon Ross?
Yes.
Johnson?
Yes.
Kimball? Smith?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Okay, thank you, board members. We will move into a brief executive session, and GR has the document open and is going to make the motion for us.
I move the Board of Education recess to executive session for the purposes of discussing personnel matters of non-elected personnel in order to protect the privacy interests of the individuals to be discussed, with the board to return to open session at 9:32 with possible action to follow.
Is there a second?
This is Melissa, second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, please use the link that Joe provided and make sure you're muted and video off on this end.
Carol, I don't know that you've moved to the other session, so I can still
Okay. I think we have board members back. And Dr. Lewis is coming. We do have a couple announcements. I'll say that we have our next public.
Kelly, sorry to interrupt you. Need to wait till 9:32. My computer clock
I knew
tells
you were going to say that,
Yeah.
Dave. We know that we are ahead.
Oh,
Thank
some
you.
people might not have returned.
We'll
Thank
wait. Okay. So with Dave Cunningham's approval, we will now wrap the meeting up. And I will ask for announcements. The announcement we have is we have our next board meeting January 11th. We wish everyone happy winter break. And Dr. Lewis, do you have any announcements?
No, we're just looking forward to bringing a report to the board on the work we've been doing with our families in transition and our ESL scholars and families. So we look forward to that January 11th update. Everyone, please enjoy your holiday break.
All right, so we now need a motion to adjourn.
This is GR. I move that we adjourn the meeting.
Is there a second?
And a second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? You all. I wish everybody a happy new year.
Next year.